Are you ready, Christina?
Can everyone hear me okay?
Yep.
Great.
Okay.
Well, good afternoon. My name is Christina Castro. I am the liaison to the Board of Governors. Thank you for joining the California Community Board of Governors meeting. Today's meeting begins at 12:30 p.m., but we'll wait a couple minutes as people continue to log in. In the meantime, to access the Board of Governors meeting agenda, please visit our website, ccco.edu, and go to the About Us tab and Board of Governors, then meeting schedule, minutes, and agenda, and select the blue agenda hyperlink to view the agenda on Board Docs. As a reminder, we would like to have closed caption available. Please click the CC at the bottom of the screen labeled closed caption to read live captions. Members of the public wishing to comment on an agenda item may comment via Zoom using the raise hand feature when the comment period is open, or by sending an email to boardcomments@ccco.edu. You can identify yourself or specify that you would like to make an anonymous comment. A Chancellor's Office staff member will read your comment to the board. President Epstein, today is September 21st, 2020, and we are ready to begin.
First, we start to call the roll.
Hildegarde B. Aguinaldo.
Here.
Darius W. Anderson. Amy M. Costa.
Here.
Tom Epstein.
Here.
Felicia Escobar Carrillo.
Here.
Cullum Fitzgerald.
Here.
Jolina M. Grande. Pamela Haynes.
Here.
Pamela Haynes.
Here.
Kevin J. Hall. Eleni Kolonakis. Kim Perigo.
Here.
Jennifer L. Perry.
Here.
Bill Rawlings.
Here.
Alma Salazar. Valerie L. Shaw.
Here.
Yulia Tarasova.
Here.
Blas Villalobos.
Here.
Joseph Williams.
Here.
Okay, so next is the Pledge of Allegiance, and we have,
Excuse me, Tom, I think a member joined the call. Member Koulonakis joined.
oh, welcome Lieutenant Governor Koulonakis.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Present.
Okay, well, first thing we're going to do is the Pledge of Allegiance, and we actually had a volunteer who was desperately wanting to do it today, and that is Member Aguinaldo.
Thank you, Board Member Epstein, or President Epstein. If you could please stand, place your right hand over your heart. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. So I first want to start off my my report with welcoming our new board members, Joseph Williams, Yulia Tarasova as our new student member, and of course Lieutenant Governor Koulonakis, who are we delighted to have her on our board. Each of you bring us unique perspective and valuable experience, and we look forward to hearing from you frequently. I'm sorry that we can't be at the Napa Valley Community College today as planned, but we are looking forward to their presentation tomorrow and having a virtual visit. And I hope all of you are doing okay despite the fire and smoke. These disasters, of course, have compounded the challenges facing the colleges due to COVID. economic recession and the racial justice reckoning. And Chancellor Oakley will report on the impact of the recent fire and smoke on the colleges. We have a lengthy agenda today and tomorrow, so I'm going to apologize in advance, but I really request the presenters, the board, and the public comments to be as concise as possible. And we'll do our best to stay on schedule. Finally, I want to express my deep regret at the death of Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg. She was, of course, a champion for equality, justice, opportunity, and especially the rights of women in our society. And she was an inspiration to us all. And on a personal note, I worked in the White House at the time she was nominated and played a tiny role in trying to organize support for her, and saw her in person at the time. And so I do feel also a personal connection to her. And I really hope that her successor reflects the same values, courage, and intellect that she always displayed. With that, I'll turn it over to Chancellor Oakley. You're on mute. Chancellor, you're on mute.
There we go. Computer's a little slow today. Oh my. Anyway, good afternoon to all the board members and to all the members of the public, and thank you, Board President Epstein. I echo your comments as well. While I won't repeat them, I think they're especially important comments. I too want to welcome our newest board members. It's great to have you with us. Very excited to have you. I also want to welcome our newest Vice Chancellor to the Chancellor's office. Our new Vice Chancellor of Educational Services and Support, Rebecca Ruan O'Shaughnessy. So virtually welcome her to the team. We're happy to have her. One of these days we'll get to meet her in person. I do have just a few updates. First, I want to take a moment to thank and recognize Kindred Murillo, the president of Southwestern College. She has announced her retirement. Now that makes two in the San Diego County area, her and Chancellor Constance Carroll, who are leaving us. Kindred has been an amazing champion for students her entire career in the California community colleges. She did an amazing job at Lake Tahoe. She's done amazing work, particularly around diversity, equity, and inclusion at Southwestern Community College. So I just want to say thank you to Kindred Murillo for her amazing service to our system. I also want to make a brief statement about the questions around enrollment. There's been a lot of questions about the enrollment in the California community colleges. There's been a lot written about enrollment across the country in colleges and universities. And certainly this is an issue that we're paying very close attention to. We're very concerned about, particularly as it relates to any loss of enrollment for our most vulnerable student population. So we're keeping a close eye. The preliminary data so far have suggested that we had an enrollment increase during the summer session, which is good news. Many students were able to recover from the initial onset of the pandemic and able to take classes that they needed. So that's good news. We did begin the semester with a brief decline in enrollment. We're seeing that gap beginning to close. We'll have more data come November, but right now we're probably looking at around a 5 to 7% decrease in enrollment thus far. Having said that, there are many late enrolling classes that are still available, and we encourage students from throughout the state to get enrolled, to stay enrolled, and to continue pursuing their educational opportunities in spite of all the challenges they are facing. A few other updates. One, I wanted to thank the SSCCC for the work that they've been doing around the California Students Vote project in partnership with the Secretary of State's office. Secretary of State launched this initiative during the College Ballot Bowl competition, in which colleges were encouraged to engage students in registering to vote and voting. And of course, this is our last meeting before the November election. So I encourage everyone to be registered, to vote early, and to make your vote count. There is so much on the ballot this November. Also want to recognize, again, the work that's happening around the call to action. As all of you know, our students and their families are involved with several crises right now. Certainly the health crisis, the economic crisis, but also the crisis around social equity, structural racism, and all the work that they're doing to lean into this issue. And so are our colleges. So I just continue to encourage our colleges to continue to lean into the diversity, equity, and inclusion recommendations that were sponsored by this Board of Governors. Many districts have already stepped up, so thank you. Meeting the June 3rd call to action, but we continue to need to lean into this. And our students continue to remind us every single day why this is such an important issue. And again, I want to thank, I know I'm a broken record here, but the SSCCC for the work that they've been doing around identifying and working through issues of structural racism themselves. So thank you. Last couple of things, we are moving forward with the listening tours again. We will do them virtually. We are scheduled to be at Bakersfield College, Norco College, and Madera College right now. Bakersfield College is scheduled for October 26th, Madera College for November 12th. We landed on election day at Norco, but we're going to work to change that since there's really only one thing we need to worry about on election day. With that, I'm going to stop and again, thank everyone for the amazing work that they're doing in helping our students in this fall semester. The last thing I'll say is I also want to thank the many college districts up and down the state, San Diego, LA, so many others who have announced their plans for the spring semester. And I know it's difficult to imagine that we will be in the same situation in the spring semester, going virtually, online, remote. But I think the more that we can do this, the more certainty we give our students, the more opportunity we give our students, particularly students who have family, who have their own children in the K-12 system. It gives them some certainty. This is still a difficult situation, but I want to thank the many colleges up and down the state who have already announced their plans, who are gearing up. And finally, just a big thank you to all the faculty who continue to do amazing work to engage with our students. I will turn it back over to you, Board President Epstein.
Thank you, Chancellor. We will now convene into closed session. I'm expecting that to probably be in the 30 to 45-minute range, but could be wrong. So we'll be back in the public meeting probably in that period of time. So thank you.
The Board of Governors has adjourned to closed session and will return around 1:30 p.m. Thank you.
Now, okay, so we're back in public session?
Yes.
Okay. So in the closed session, we discussed potential litigation and we discussed performance review of the chancellor. We have nothing to report out. With that, we're going to move to item 3.1, the board meeting minutes. Deputy Chancellor Gonzalez, do you have anything to say or should we just go forward?
No, that's fine, President Epstein. It's just on consent. Happy to make any changes if anyone caught anything.
Okay, do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Haynes, second.
Okay. I think because we're on Zoom, we need to call the roll. Is that correct? Yeah.
Hildegarde B. Aguinaldo. Amy M. Costa. Tom Epstein.
Aye.
Felicia Escobar Carrillo. Colin Fitzgerald.
Aye. And Felicia just connected to audio, right, when you said that?
Aye. Oh, great. Felicia Escobar Carrillo. Thank you. Hildy Aguinaldo.
Here.
No, this is a vote on the minutes.
Oh, okay.
So you need to say
Come
I.
back to
Right?
me.
You need to say I
Aye.
rather than here.
I thought it was roll. My apologies.
Thank you. Delina M. Grande.
Aye.
Pamela Haynes.
Aye.
Eleni Konalakis.
It's Kounalakis for the record.
Konalakis. Kim Perigo. Jennifer Perry. Bill Rawlings.
Yes.
Alma Salazar. Valerie Shaw. Yulia Teresa, oh, excuse me.
Nice.
Blas Villalobos.
Yes.
Joseph Williams.
Aye.
So did we have enough members to adopt that? Do we have a quorum? How many yes votes were there, Christina?
I saw yes, 8.
8. So we need one more. I think some people are joining.
We need 10 actually, Tom.
Well, there's only 17
Oh,
voting.
there's 17 members. Okay.
Yeah.
Right. 9.
So I think Kim, are you on? I think you didn't vote.
And Alma's joined as well. I think
Okay, Christina, why don't you call the members who didn't vote that are here, the ones that are here?
Yes. Amy Costa.
What are we voting on? Sorry, I just.
The minutes.
Aye.
Alma Salazar.
Aye. Aye.
Thank you. Kim Perigo.
Aye.
Jennifer Perry.
Here, sorry.
It's actually I rather than here. We're voting on the minutes.
Oh. Well, really not here, so aye.
Okay, we got everyone registered? Okay, well, that was the most exciting vote for the minutes in the history of the Board of Governors. Okay. The most long out dramatic. Okay, moving on to the action calendar. 4.1, grants and contracts, Deputy Chancellor Gonzalez.
Thank you, President Epstein. Good afternoon. We'll make this one quick, but I will summarize what I usually summarize since we have a few new members. The Board of Governors Standing Orders requires the Chancellor to receive board approval before entering into any contract or grant, even an amendment, if it is in excess of $100,000 or 3 years in duration, or in the case of consulting services, $50,000. Today, for your consideration and vote are 2 contracts and 2 grants. In all of these cases, the state legislature has established the purpose of the funds. However, I do want to highlight 2 key things that are usually the topic of question. The first one is that on item 3, our office did receive 3 proposals. All 3 were reviewed and all 3 were awarded. They were very successful proposals and they met the requirements of the legislature's intent for those dollars. I also want to highlight item number 2. It has a unique situation where the fiscal agent, as you know, we are required to send all Prop $98 to a fiscal agent, decided to terminate its fiscal agent agreement due to staffing capacity issues. Our staff quickly moved forward during this crisis to ensure that those dollars can be sent out to our colleges and to our system. What you see in front of you is a transfer of funds from one fiscal agent to another so that our team can continue to use those dollars that are intended to be used for economic and workforce development. So it is a behind the scenes fiscal agent transfer to ensure that those dollars can continue to be dispersed to our system. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have on any of the 4 contracts or grants.
Any questions? Okay, any public comment on this item?
Public comment period for this item is now open. Please use the raise hand feature in Zoom to make a comment to the board. If you are calling into the meeting, use *9 to activate the raise hand feature. A member of the Chancellor's office will call on you and allow you to speak your public comment. You have a maximum of 3 minutes.
This is Gary Alexander with the Chancellor's office. President Galizio, I believe I saw your hand up. Did you have a comment that you wanted to make? If so, please raise your hand. Okay, then at this time, I do not see any public comments in Zoom.
I have not received any public comment via email at this time.
Okay. Are we doing live speaking comments today? Okay. All right, then we will entertain a motion.
Also move.
Second.
Now that I'm here.
And somebody seconded, who was that?
Costa with the second.
Okay. Okay, please call the roll.
Hildegarde B. Aguinaldo.
Aye.
Amy M. Costa.
Aye.
Tom Epstein.
Aye.
Felicia Escobar Carrillo.
Aye.
Colm Fitzgerald.
Aye.
Jolina Grande.
Aye.
Pamela Haynes.
Aye.
Eleni Kolonakis. Kim Perigo.
Aye.
Jennifer Perry.
Aye.
Bill Rawlings.
Aye.
Alma Salazar.
Aye.
Valerie Shaw.
Aye.
Bill Rawlings. Or excuse me, Blas Villalobos.
Aye.
Joseph Williams.
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, the item passes. Moving on to 4.2, Deputy Chancellor Gonzalez.
All right, thank you, President Epstein. This item presents an opportunity for the Board of Governors to take action on a regulatory action that's related to your diversity, equity, and inclusion plan. So it is one of the 68 recommendations adopted by the Board of Governors in September of 2019. We want to thank the original task force, as well as the implementation work group, the EO and Diversity Advisory, and the Consultation Council for their feedback on these regulations. If adopted today, the proposed regulations establish the board's commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion by adopting principles that all California community colleges must adhere to in the administration of all programs under the authority of the Board of Governors, consistent with state and federal law. This item was heard at the Consultation Council in July, where no opposition was shared. The board also heard this item at their July board meeting when the public comment period began. The public comment period has now closed, and the General Counsel has responded to all comments, which we shared with the public and with you as an attachment for this item. And today I'm joined by our Deputy Counsel, Fermin Villegas, and we are both happy to answer any questions that you may have. Thank you.
President Epstein, I have a question for the staff.
Please go forward.
One of the comments was around, one of the public comments that was submitted as part of these was around employment status. And I have kind of a different question that I think is outside of the public comment. I think the public comment was really around employment status within our system. My question has to do more with employment status more broadly. Given that we're experiencing such high unemployment rates, et cetera. So can you just talk a little bit more about the public comment and your guys' response to that?
Fermin, I'll let you answer that question.
Sure, I think I'll take that one. Thank you, Dr. Gonzalez and Board Member Costa. Yeah, so the question there was that the comment submitted was a request to include employment status as a protected category in the regulation. The reasoning from commenters, I believe there were 3 separate commenters that submitted that same or similar request. And their stated purpose was to have basically a protection for part-time faculty. in the sense that they feel that part-time faculty sometimes is not considered, is not taken into account when decisions are made. And so that seemed to be the crux of that request. However, as we stated in our response to that comment, was that we really our intent by adopting the statement in the way that we did was to mirror state and federal anti-discrimination laws that talk about innate characteristics for the most part. And so we didn't believe that it was appropriate to put employment status into the regulation at that point. There are other employment protections available through collective bargaining laws, other employment protections that exist in the government code and others that would provide that similar protection for employees. And so that was the reason that we didn't include it in this language.
Any other board comments or questions? Any public comments or questions?
Public comment period for this item is now open. Please use the raise hand feature in Zoom to make a comment to the board. If you're calling into the meeting, use *9 to activate the raise hand feature. A member of the Chancellor's office will call on you and allow you to speak your public comment. You have a maximum of 3 minutes.
Debbie Klein has her hand up, and I have unmuted you, and you'll have 3 minutes to address the board, and you can take that now.
Good morning, or good afternoon, President Epstein, Vice President Haynes, and members of the Board of Governors. This is Debbie Klein, President of the Faculty Association of California Community Colleges. FACC is excited to support our Board of Governors' adoption of this powerful statement, which has inspired our association's own DEI statement. We especially wanted to call out the section of the statement expressing our commitment to embrace diversity. The California Community Colleges embrace diversity among students, faculty, staff, and the communities we serve as an integral part of our history, a recognition of the complexity of our present state, and a call to action for a better future. FACC is looking forward to working with our partners to secure the funding that will allow for the hiring of more full-time faculty, which will enable us to achieve our system's goal of diversifying the faculty. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other public comments?
Yes, I have Eric Kaljumagi. You are unmuted and you can address the board now.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon, President Epstein, Vice President Haynes, members of the board, and Chancellor Oakley. I am Eric Kaljumagi, the president of the Community College Association, which is the CTA affiliate dealing with higher education. I was also one of the commenters involved in requesting that employment status be included, but it's not as a protected category. The response that you have is not actually accurate. It is true that in the DEI statement, the categories that were chosen happen to be the protected classes that exist in California law. But the section in question is not about protected classes. It is about diversity, equity, and inclusion. I have been employed full-time in the education field since August 1992. I haven't missed a paycheck in nearly 30 years. The world that I bring, the mindset that I bring, the background that I bring is very, very far from some of that's dealt with from our part-time faculty. It's as much a difference in perspective and belief and opinion and confidence about the future than you would find in a disadvantaged class that is elsewhere. So I stand by the comments that I provided to the Chancellor's office. I do encourage you to consider the world of the unemployed and the underemployed, including our adjunct faculty. And I fully recognize that these do not provide a legally protected class at present, but they are a very different view in our diverse world. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment?
Yes, I have received some public comment via email. I will read those now. First is from Mark Evil Sizer, Governing Board Trustee at Palomar Community College District. Hello, colleagues. The English department at Palomar College has provided a statement of solidarity for our anti-racist work at the college. Please see the powerful statement below. English department statement on equity, diversity, and inclusion. In response to ongoing societal inequities based on race and the deaths of individuals like George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, and Daniel Prude, to name just a few, at the hands of state power, the English department of Palomar College stands in solidarity with the Black Lives Matter movement and affirms its support for our BIPOC, Black, Indigenous, and People of Color, students, faculty, and staff. Further, we support the current movements to dismantle widespread systemic racism and discrimination. Finally, we commit to continued individual and collective anti-racist work in ourselves, our classrooms, our campus, and our larger communities through the following. Interrogating within ourselves our uses of language, discourse, and representation in order to create an environment that fosters equity and social justice, offering ongoing professional development, collaboration, and curriculum review to develop anti-racist teaching and assessment practices, maintaining and growing the diversity of our department through recruitment, hiring, and retention, encouraging anti-racist practices and frameworks into our coursework through culturally responsive and relevant readings, assignments, and activities in order to validate our BIPOC students' perspectives and experiences, creating a learning environment that empowers our BIPOC students to understand connections between language, critical thinking, reading, and writing, supporting the call to action on Palomar College's Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion page, and continuing to hold administration and campus leadership accountable for supporting and providing resources and programs to ensure success in our BIPOC students. Through all these efforts, we will prioritize combating systemic racism and preventing the marginalization and oppression in all of the spaces that we occupy.
Thank you.
Yes.
Are there any others?
Yes. The next public comment comes from Jose Fierro, President Superintendent, Cerritos Community College District. Dear President Epstein and members of the Board of Governors, Cerritos College supports the adoption of the DEI statement in Title V of the California Education Code of Regulations. Our campus is committed to ensure diversity for all students, faculty, and staff. As our students come from many different backgrounds and carry many different intersectionalities, we are committed to ensure their safety and freedom of expression. The historic effort of the California Community College system to implement a statement committed to diversity, equity, and inclusion is imperative at a time where civil unrest disrupts our country. As a system, we must lead by purpose and example. The California Community Colleges serves 2.2 million students and is the largest provider of workforce training in the nation, positioning it at the center of economic and social mobility opportunities in the state. As an open access institution, the system serves a diverse student population in terms of race and ethnicity, age, and levels of education attainment. At Cerritos College, we have worked diligently to implement our own goals to support the Chancellor's Call to Action Vision for Success plan that aligns with the efforts the campus to mobilize around the call to action. In viewing the education master plan with an equity lens is not new to Cerritos College, as each shared governance body and campus leader have integrated the call to action into work plans for this year. These actions will also be incorporated into the board president's annual goals. By utilizing and expanding on existing framework holds Cerritos College accountable to making progress. The college is committed to the success of these efforts in order to continue identifying inequalities within our system and within our college. We are all partners in this effort to achieve the ultimate goal of success for students. California Education Code Section 87100 requires a workforce that is continually responsive to the needs of a diverse student population, which may be achieved by ensuring that all students and persons receive an equal opportunity to complete for employment and promotion within the community college districts by eliminating barriers to equal employment opportunity, Maintaining an equitable institution for our campus community is what we continue to aim to achieve here at Cerritos College. Please feel free to contact me with any questions or concerns at jfiero@cerritos.edu.
Thank you. Are there any more?
Yes, we got one last one from email by Pamela Lester. The CEO, CCC, just one moment. The CEO, CCC Board and the CCLC Executive Board urge support for adoption of the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Statement. This year, the CCLC Executive Board, CEO, CCC, and CCCT have adopted annual goals that align with all of the elements of this statement. They include a focus on racial equity, creating more equitable resources for our system, and recovery, transformation, and innovation as we emerge from the current health pandemic. This alignment will strengthen our collective efforts to serve our students with a focus on our institutional responsibilities to create the conditions that matter for their success. That's it for public comment via email.
Thank you. So there's no other public comment from, in person either. Okay, I'm sorry?
That is correct.
Okay. So then we're able to entertain a motion to adopt proposed regulatory action 4.2 on diversity, equity, and inclusion statement.
I'll move, Tom.
Move to approve.
Perigo and Rawlings. Okay, please call the roll.
Hildegarde B. Aguinaldo.
Aye.
Amy M. Costa.
Aye.
Tom Epstein.
Aye.
Felicia Escobar Carrillo.
Aye.
Colm Fitzgerald.
Aye.
Jolina Grande.
Aye.
Pamela Haynes.
Sorry, aye.
Eleni Konalakis. Kim Perigo.
Aye.
Jennifer Perry.
Aye.
Bill Rawlings.
Aye.
Alma Salazar.
Aye.
Valerie Shaw.
Aye.
Blas Villalobos.
Aye.
Joseph Williams.
Aye.
Okay, well, that's a great moment when we adopt this statement as a formal policy. So mission accomplished there. And Christina, I need to give you an enormous amount of credit. I've never heard anyone enunciate better through a mask than you do.
Thank you.
We should go ahead with item 4.3. Is that my understanding? Okay, let's do item 4.3, proposed regulatory action on the Chancellor's emergency authority. Mark?
Thank you, President, Vice President, and members. Okay, so we heard this in first reading last time. This is second reading on the Chancellor's Emergency Authority Regulation. The purpose of the regulation is to make permanent the authority that was granted to the Chancellor to exercise emergency powers, and that was granted to him in March. Under the board's rules, an emergency regulation can only take effect for 180 days, and that period expired last week. So we need the board to take regulatory action today in order to continue the Chancellor's emergency authority. The Chancellor executed 7 executive orders using the power under the temporary regulation. All of those actions were undertaken at the request of a constituency group within the community colleges. There have been no real criticisms, in fact, of the way the Chancellor exercised the power, quite the contrary. And in executing those orders, the Chancellor engaged in stakeholder consultation and coordination with the President and Vice President of the board. So in order for the emergency measures that the Chancellor took during that period to continue in effect, he will need to reauthorize them under a permanent regulation that we are proposing the board adopt today. In response to concerns expressed by the Board of Governors at the last meeting and commentators during the public comment period, the version that you have before you today does adopt several revisions. One is that prior to taking action, the Chancellor must receive the approval of the President and the Vice President. The action that the Chancellor takes must be returned to the board for ratification, amendment, or rejection by the board within 120 days. So as a practical matter, that means that the Chancellor will return the action to the board for review either at the first available meeting or the second meeting. And we do that because of timing and agenda type concerns. The fact that the Chancellor will bring these items to the board invokes the consultation process, which we have made express in the proposed regulation. So the full panoply of the Consultation Council will be invoked by this prior to board review. And then we have added at the request of the Student Senate that they would be included in the pre-consultation with the Chancellor in the same manner that the Academic Senate was in the earlier version. So the Chancellor would be required to consult with the Student Senate prior to taking emergency action on matters that directly affect students. And then we have also added that the pre-consultation should not delay executive action. So those are the amendments that we have taken. I would ask for your aye vote on the resolution, which should be modified to include the latest round of amendments that we have shared with the board members. And I'll take any questions at this time.
Let me just add very quickly. I just want to publicly thank our General Counsel. He has worked tirelessly with virtually every constituent group, and I know many of the constituent groups have expressed either their suggestions, concerns, and we've been working through that. So this is a culmination of all that. Most recently, we heard concerns from the CCC at the League, and I just want to publicly be clear that we very much appreciate the input from the League and the trustees as well. So we will ensure that the constituent groups that are affected by any emergency order are consulted with and apprised of what's going forward. So I'll turn it back over to you, Board President Epstein.
Okay, I believe Member Costa had a question.
Yeah, it might be for Mark. We made these amendments in part to have kind of a check and balance, and some of the supplemental public comments seem to think we didn't quite hit the mark with that. I think, people can disagree about that, but can you talk a little bit more about what this looks like in districts or other systems, which I assume you kind of looked at as you were developing this?
Well, there are some executive orders. I didn't look closely at districts. There were some emergency actions taken. The situation in districts is a little different because they are meeting monthly as opposed to twice a month, and it's a local body, so it is easier to call the district trustees together on shortened notice and within 24 hours. So it's not really that close an analogy. The quickest that we could bring the board together would be on 3 days notice. And I think one thing that to keep in mind and the importance of this to the Chancellor is that when we were confronted with this pandemic back in March, it became immediately apparent that there were some actions that would have to be taken. And rather than addressing immediately how we could help the system, we had to turn to whether we could help. And it was clear that the Chancellor didn't have all of the authority that he needed. And it resulted in a delay of about 2 weeks between the governor's emergency declaration and our being able to provide assistance to the system. And so one of the advantages of this regulation is that we are providing a clear path for a future chancellor to take immediate action when faced with an emergency. I think that's critically important. And to your point, Member Costa, about balancing the checks and balances, in the earlier version, we were not requiring the chancellor to go back and seek affirmative ratification. It was something that could be done, but it wasn't required. Now it is required. And so in pretty prompt order, the board, if they feel that the emergency action isn't quite appropriate or there's been overreach by the chancellor, can correct that pretty quickly.
Any other comments? Any public comments?
Public comment period for this item is now open. Please use the raise hand feature in Zoom to make a comment to the board. If you are calling into the meeting, use *9 to activate the raise hand feature. A member of the Chancellor's office will call on you and allow you to speak your public comment. You have a maximum of 3 minutes.
So we have Debbie Klein. I have enabled you to speak. You have 3 minutes to address the board, and those begin now.
Thank you. Good afternoon again, President Epstein, Vice President Haynes, and members of the Board of Governors. This is Debbie Klein, President of FACC. FACC opposes this proposed permanent change to Title V, granting the Chancellor emergency authority. FACC stands in solidarity with our disability support services and programs community and many others in opposition to this proposed change. This expansion of powers was not necessary last spring during the onset of the worst global health crisis in a century, so we don't see why this change is required now. The system's existing checks and balances are critical, and they should remain in place. The faculty we represent are deeply concerned that concentrating emergency power in the hands of the few reaches a new level of institutional arrogance and is the wrong direction for the California community colleges. The collective wisdom of the entire Board of Governors is even more essential during times of emergency. As we've learned from virtual meetings like this one, the convening of an emergency session of the entire board is not a prohibitive cost or burden. There is no justification to grant the Chancellor of a system of higher education this level of emergency authority. The California community colleges should model a deliberative governance process when it comes to making decisions during emergencies. Thank you.
Thank you. Other public comment?
Yes, we have Danita Scott. You have control of your microphone and you have 3 minutes to address the board beginning now.
Good afternoon, President Epstein, Chancellor Oakley, and board members. I'm Danita Scott, President of the California Community Colleges Extended Opportunity Programs and Services Association. I greet you in memory of Senator Alfred Alquist, who authored Senate Bill 164, establishing EOPS in the California Community College system. On behalf of the nearly 1,000 students we serve, I thank Governor Newsom and the Chancellor's Office for its ongoing support and for reaffirming the importance of equity and success programs like EOPS Care and Next Up. As you grapple with the overwhelming impact of COVID-19 on our educational system, it is my reverent hope that EOPS Care and Next Up remain priorities in your vision for success. As you know, students served by our programs are among the most marginalized communities. Our ability to provide intrusive counseling, retention, and over and above supportive services not only aligns with the Guided Pathways Initiative, but is critical to our institution's ability to leverage the student-centered funding formula. We are an integral partner in helping students, our campuses, and our system meet the call for equity and student success. As we look forward to continuing the work that began 51 years ago and remain committed to our collective mission and the success of our most marginalized students, Finally, while CCC EOPSA does not oppose the expanded emergency authority proposal, we do seek to ensure that granting of such authority continues to include consultation and constituency vetting. Thank you.
Thank you. Other comments?
Yes, Dolores Davison.
Good afternoon, Board President Epstein, Vice President Haynes, Chancellor Oakley, and members of the Board of Governors. My name is Dolores Davison. I am the President of the Academic Senate for California Community Colleges. I wish to take this opportunity to thank Legal Counsel Mark Laforestier and his office for their work on this and their involvement with the Academic Senate in ensuring that the Academic Senate's purview over academic and professional matters is guarded in these new regulations. We very much appreciate his willingness to listen to our concerns, and at this time we have no opposition to this particular matter. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other public comment?
Yes, Rodney Murphy, you have control of your mic. You can go ahead and address the board.
Hi, yes, I'm calling in. I'm Rodney Murphy, a Assembly Ideally Coordinator for Umoja programs at Fresno City College. And I do a lot of equity work on our campus. And so I'm just, want to make the board aware of how important that work is for our men of color, particularly our men of color are performing at a lower clip than any other student in the state of California. And so equity funding for our Umoja programs are really integral to the work we do with these men of color. As a community college graduate and also a student in a special programs, Umoja program, when I was at Fresno City College back in 2003. Those type of programs were very instrumental in changing my life and putting me on a path to where I am now. And on a path to higher education. It started for me at community college. I'm someone that came from an undesirable background, low socioeconomic status, single parent household, didn't have a father. When I went to Fresno City College and joined the SIMBA program, which stands for Strengthening Young Men by Academic Achievement, my life began to change. I was able to get a clear vision of what I needed to do. And so as a coordinator of that program, I try to give the same thing to my students. When I started at that program, we were recruiting about 30 to 40 students per year. Now we're up to 60 to 80, and we're able to serve 350 students campus-wide. And it was due to the expansion of funding to those programs by our chancellor. And so just want to let you guys know that these programs are absolutely necessary. They absolutely work. I'm a living testimony to these programs, and very happy to be part of the community college system, serving students, all students, and also giving men of color like myself an opportunity to change their life for the better. And so that is all I have for today's public forum.
Thank you very much. Other public comment?
Yes, Jennifer Vega La Serna. You have control of your mic. You can address the board.
Thank you. President Epstein, Vice President Haynes, Chancellor Oakley, and members of the Board of Governors. My name is Dr. Jennifer Vega La Serna. I'm President of the California Community College Chief Instructional Officers. On behalf of the California Community College Chief Instructional Officers, I'm making this public comment on item 4.3 regarding the Chancellor's Office Emergency Authority. In response to the 2020 COVID-19 pandemic, the Board of Governors adopted an emergency regulation that authorized the Chancellor to temporarily suspend regulations that were a barrier to the continuity of educational services and impeded student success in the online environment. This emergency authority regulation was adopted on an emergency basis for 180 days and would expire September 18th, 2020. Suspension of these regulations was critical to the success of our students and institutions during this national emergency. By selectively and temporarily relieving regulatory burdens, our students were allowed to complete their courses and programs and transition to universities or careers without unnecessary unnecessary delays. As the COVID-19 pandemic emergency continues for the fall 2020 semester, it is essential that the temporary suspension of regulations continue through the duration of the crisis. Moreover, our recent history has demonstrated that emergencies can and do arise frequently and from numerous causes. In times of emergency, it is imperative that the California community colleges are able to act expeditiously in support of their students and suspend temporary regulations adopted by the board that are a barrier to the continuity of education services. Much like a campus emergency where the president is tasked to make decisions outside of the usual participatory governance structures, but in light of the college's priorities and values, our state system needs the ability to respond in a timely manner. The CIOs support this approach for our system at the state level under a permissive approach that is attentive to local needs and follow the model established in the current emergency by the Chancellor's office. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment?
Yes, Carmi Minor Flores. You have control of your mic. You can address the board.
Yes, thank you very much, everyone on the board. This is my first time speaking and I don't know who's on the board, but I want to thank everyone. I just got an email in reference to this and I wanted to take the opportunity to respond. I am an Emoja coordinator at Palomar College. It's a new program at our school. We're 2 years and coming into our third year. We've gone from 7 students to 125 students. And the program, the learning communities have really helped our students stay focused, stay in school. And in spite of the pandemic, we're taking extra efforts to make sure their needs are met. And so programs like these really, truly help our students go far. Like my colleague before, this last person that commented, another Emoja coordinator, it's amazing how much a difference is when we're deliberate, when we're focused, when we're nurturing, when we take the time on the weekends and the evenings and the mornings, every opportunity that we get an email, we want to answer our students and we want to make sure that they get to the next step. And so programs like these, I just want to reiterate and state the fact that we want to keep these alive, provide as much funding for them as possible because they're our future and we're in line with Black Lives Matter and we want to move with all what is going on and support our school in the many programs that are there for all students. And specifically, right now I'd like to speak on behalf of the African American population and really speak for them and show you that, or inform you that there is a great need for this program to succeed. And the more funds, the more support, it'll only help students achieve their dreams. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Any other public comment?
There's no any further live public comments.
President Epstein, I have received quite a few comments in the board comments email. I'd like to read a few.
Are they largely similar?
So there are some that are largely similar.
Okay, so please try and limit it to those that have something unique to say, and make sure they all go into the chat or record so that we can all read them.
President Epstein, this is Board Member Costa. Can I ask a clarifying question? I'm wondering if some of the public comments we're hearing are related to another agenda item or if they're particular to this one.
So there have been an email that was circulated regarding the Emoja programs. We're not sure exactly what item those were going to be trying to address because the communications we have didn't specify that. We believe that we're going to save those public comments for the public forum. However, in this format, we don't know what they want to speak to if the only indication is a raised hand.
I wonder if they were really interested in commenting on the budget item.
I was wondering if they were speaking to the diversity, equity, and inclusion statement. It sounds like some of them are sort of alluding to that. So maybe they're just off by one item or something.
Christina, the ones you have now, are they directly related to this item?
Yes.
Okay.
And
Well, let's go ahead.
I'm sorry. Can we keep each of those to 3 minutes, even though it may be longer?
Certainly, I am keeping a time on my end. All right, shall I resume?
Yes, please. You know,
Yes.
make sure that we see all the comments, but you only need to verbalize ones that offer a unique perspective, please.
Yes, sir. All right. So our first comment is from Larry Galizio, President and CEO from the League. The draft regulations do not specifically direct the Chancellor to work in collaboration with local governing boards. This has the potential of allowing for overreach of authority by whomever is serving as Chancellor and creates tension with Ed Code Regulation 70901, which includes the following. The work of the Board of Governors shall at all times be directed to maintaining and continuing to the maximum degree permissible local authority and control in the administration of the California community colleges, end quote. Please note that while we would not ascribe that motive to anyone currently at the Chancellor's office, the plain read of the language could present a problem in the future. Considering the perceived urgency to take action today, we respectfully request for inclusion in the motion to adopt the resolution, language that would necessitate collaboration with respective local governing boards prior to declaration and implementation of emergency authority that impact specific districts during local regional emergencies. That is the end of his. The next one I would like to read is from Stephen Kaddour, President on the Student Senate for California Community Colleges. I would like to thank those who worked on the permanent emergency authority for the Chancellor. After review of the original language, we requested that the Student Senate for California Community Colleges be added along with the Academic Senate on those issues that significantly affect students. The legislative acknowledges the role of students in those areas that affect them in the Education Code section 51023.7, and we request that the Board of Governors also acknowledge this role by including the SSCCC in the permanent emergency authority. The leadership of the Chancellor's office has accepted this language, and we are very appreciative. And then the last one I will read is the one that's very similar with the rest that I've received, or unless you don't want me to.
If it's a unique perspective from what we've heard already, please do. If it's identical to some of the verbal comments we've already received, then you could just say that who they're from and that they basically express the same point of view.
I think, President, if there is basically a form email that multiple people have sent, I would suggest that we read one of them and then capture the names of the others.
Great. Thank you. I will read one, and then I will put the names that I've received those comments from in the chat. This one is from Alice Dean from CalWorks at Palo Verde College. Dear California Community College Board of Governors, I am writing in opposition of and to request your rejection of proposed regulatory action adding Chapter 3.5 of Division 6 of Title 5, Chancellor's Emergency Authority. The Chancellor already has effective emergency powers, and this revised and expanded proposal enacted as a permanent change to Title 5 allows the Chancellor to act outside of the CCC consultation process of checks and balances. Most concerningly, this enhancement of emergency authority gives the Chancellor unprecedented power to waive, alter, or add Title V regulations in the name of continuity of educational services. Beyond, without limitation, a period of emergency proclaimed by the Governor of the State of California in the name of continuity of educational services, and citing the avoidance of undue administrative burden or to prevent the disruption of educational services. Programs and services protected in these regulations are at risk of significant unintended consequences if there is little or no meaningful consultation component. Categorical programs are too broad and complex for cursory consultation with a very limited number of people. The Chancellor has been very effective with the current emergency powers already granted to him by the Board of Governors throughout the last 7 months of the worst global health crisis in 100 years, as well as one of the worst fire seasons in California history. Clearly, this is proof that there is no need for an additional permanent Title V expansion of emergency powers that could so easily be abused down the line by other chancellors who might wish to push a preferred educational agenda. Educationally speaking, the proposal could have far more critically negative impact on already vulnerable student populations than the current emergency situations providing the platform for this proposal. The nebulous wording, continuity of educational services, can simply be construed too many ways to offset the possible abuse of these powers and unforeseen negative consequences to students served by various programs, if granted. For these reasons, the California Community Colleges CalWorks Association opposes the proposed regulatory action, adding Chapter 3.5 of Division 6 of Title V to emergency authorities, and respectfully request your rejection of the proposal.
Thank you, and thanks to all of the others who submitted comments. It looks like we have another live comment.
Yes, Larry Galizio, you have control of your mic.
We've already heard a message from Larry Galizio that was read. I don't think Mr. Galizio gets to comment twice.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So I apologize about that.
Could I would like to.
I think he wants to clarify part of his written comment.
Okay.
Yes. So apologies. So subsequent to the written comments, discussion with Mark LaForestier and others, including league board members, we are satisfied with the consultation process and do not oppose the adoption of the regulation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, is that it for public comment? Okay, I believe we have a member of the board who would like to raise an issue. Member Fitzgerald.
Thank you, President Epstein. I wasn't going to make a comment, but I heard a couple different phrases regarding, this is going to impact disproportionately disenfranchised students. And there's a reason why the Student Senate is extremely in favor of this action. That's because that statement is about tokenizing the student voice. It's very clear that this emergency regulation to the students and student leadership is about saving those populations. It's about making sure that we don't lose those populations and investing within the Chancellor's Office the power to ensure that very thing. So I wasn't going to make a comment. I just want to make sure that we know that that's flipped on its head, and there's a very strong reason why the Student Senate supports this action. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we've had a vigorous discussion here. I think we're ready to take a motion.
So moved.
I'll second.
Okay, that's Fitzgerald and I'm not sure if Rawlings or Villalobos.
Villalobos.
Okay, Villalobos gets the second this time. He gets a special mention in the next minutes. Okay, please call the roll.
Yes. Hildegarde B. Aguinaldo.
Aye.
Amy M. Costa.
Aye.
Tom Epstein.
Aye.
Felicia Escobar Carrillo.
Aye.
Colum Fitzgerald.
Aye.
Jolina Grande.
Aye.
Pamela Haynes.
Aye.
Eleni Konalakis. Kim Perigo.
Aye.
Jennifer Perry.
Aye.
Bill Rawlings.
Aye.
Alma Salazar.
Aye.
Valerie Shaw.
Aye.
Blas Villalobos.
Aye.
Joseph Williams.
Aye.
Okay, that motion carries. On to 4.4, the regulatory action on college buys. General Counsel LaForestier, you're up again.
Okay, thank you, President Epstein. So this item is a second reading on on a regulation that would implement a provision of the Public Contract Code that authorizes the chancellor to engage in purchasing of goods and services for the community college system. Purpose of the law is to allow the chancellor to exercise the market power of the system in favor of local community colleges. So this regulation would clarify and implement how the chancellor goes about running this program. It is currently authorized by contract with the Community College Foundation and known as the CalBuys program. Participation in this is voluntary. In our past presentations, we have explained the very significant benefits of the CalBuys program for the system, and in particular during this COVID crisis. So we've received no comments from the public or otherwise on the program, so I think I'll just leave it at that unless there are any questions, and respectfully request your aye vote on the resolution promulgating this regulation.
Okay, any board comments? Member Costa?
Well, I know that this has been our practice, so I guess my question is, why do we need a resolution now?
So it has been our practice. What prompted this is that the Public Contract Code actually directed the Chancellor's office to adopt regulations implementing this 22 years ago. We never did. The foundation wanted some clarity on this, because as they are marketing the program to the community college districts, they look around and see that there seems to be a disconnect between the foundation running the program and the Chancellor's office running the program. They are connected by contract, and so we are tying up those loose ends and using the regulation to do it, which we should have done 20 years ago. So that's what prompted this.
Member Perry.
I just want to underscore the efficacy of college buys, which everybody knows, but I think it should be in the record that it saved $500 million for the colleges over the years. So whether it was under regulation or not, it was working very well, and I'm glad to see this formalized.
Thanks. Any other board comments?
President Epstein, quick question. Do we know the percentage of districts or percentage of colleges that are taking advantage of it? And then is it only supplies that are a part of this, or are there books as a part of this program too?
I don't know the answer to those questions. I know that it is a substantial percentage of college districts that are participating, but not all. And there's some, I think, fairly large districts that are not participating. Certainly books could be procured under this program. And it's not only goods, but also services. I know that some of the recent purchases have involved like software licensing be an option. And I think there's also a remote healthcare service that was one of the things that was adopted during this pandemic. That was apparently a very good program as well.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else know the answers to those questions?
Not a precise answer, but we can certainly ask the foundation and perhaps have an answer by the time we meet tomorrow.
Yeah.
Great, thanks. Any other board member comments? Any public comment?
The public comment period for this item is now open. Please use the raise hand feature in Zoom to make a comment to the board. If you're calling into the meeting, use *9 to activate the raise hand feature. A member of the Chancellor's office will call on you and allow you to speak your public comment. You have a maximum of 3 minutes.
At this time, we don't have any raised hands. Do we have any comments by email?
No, I have received no public comment via email at this time.
Okay, then let's entertain a motion.
I so move.
Second.
Before we vote, let me just correct the record. The program is called College Buys. I always call it CalBuys for some reason, but just to avoid any confusion, it's College Buys.
Okay, with that important clarification, I think it's time to call the roll.
Hildegarde B. Aguinaldo.
Aye.
Amy M. Costa.
Aye.
Tom Epstein.
Aye.
Felicia Escobar Carrillo.
Aye.
Cullum Fitzgerald.
Aye.
Jolena Grande.
Aye.
Pamela Haynes.
Aye.
Eleni Konolakis. Kim Perigo. Kim Perigo. Jennifer Perry.
Aye.
Bill Rawlings.
Aye.
Alma Salazar. Valerie Shaw.
Aye.
Blas Villalobos.
Aye.
Joseph Williams.
Aye.
Okay, motion carries. Deputy Chancellor Gonzalez, are we ready to power ahead with item 4.7? Or should we take up something before that?
Yeah, I think we could quickly, President Epstein, if you would like, take item 4.6, your state and federal update, and then we'll be ready after right after that.
Okay, let's do item 4.6.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, President Epstein, members of the board, David O'Brien, Vice Chancellor for Governmental Relations. Our Assistant Vice Chancellor for Governmental Relations, Linda Vasquez, and I will present item 4.6, the Standing State and Federal Relations Update. There is one action item within this. That's why it's on the action items calendar. And that is a resolution declaring the board's support for Proposition 15, the Schools and Communities First Act, on the November general election ballot. That'll be at the end of the item. But just briefly, what's in the item, we have an update on state legislation and advocacy, which will be presented by Linda Vasquez, who, as I mentioned, joined our team in early August and is a stellar member of the team here in governmental relations, supporting our advocacy work. And then I'll present the federal advocacy and policy update briefly. We do have an exciting update on our Undocumented Student Action Week, which is coming up in October. You can see that Linda and I are both sporting the fancy new Zoom backgrounds, which we're happy to send to you if any of you would like to use them as well in support of our Action Week. And then finally, we will close out with the resolution in support of Proposition 15. Perhaps in the interest of time, as we move through the item, it might be easiest if we take all questions at the end of the whole item rather than after the individual components. And so I will turn it over to Assistant Vice Chancellor Vasquez.
Let me interrupt. I actually think it's better to take questions after each section if people have questions. So, but our board is very disciplined and will keep the questions to a minimum, I'm sure.
Of course.
Certainly. Good afternoon, board members. It's nice to finally meet you now officially in my new role as Assistant Vice Chancellor of Government Relations. I promise to keep this brief because I know we have a lot to cover. I am, as mentioned earlier, speaking on agenda item 4.6, and you do have some attachments that you can refer as both of us present. The 2019-2020 legislative session is over, and I think I joined dozens before me in saying that the enormity of the global crisis made for a rather unusual legislative year. But with a 2-year session now over, any bills introduced at the start of the 2018 year that did not make it onto the governor's desk are now considered dead. Our GR team is monitoring just a little over 40 higher education bills that are awaiting the governor's signature, including 5 Tier 1 bills that we have taken a support position on. And you can read more about those in the attachments under the state update. We have submitted letters of support to the governor on those bills. And while we wait to hear news of those Tier 1 bills, I will note that on Friday, the governor signed SB 820, a budget trailer bill that added the Lieutenant Governor to the Board of Governors. And as Chancellor Oakley mentioned earlier, welcome Lieutenant Governor to the board. The other addition to that trailer bill to note is that it expands the use of restricted lottery funds to include the use of laptops and internet devices. As many of you know, that this was an important item that addresses a growing need for more student supports because of the pandemic. Lastly, your briefing materials include some information about recent chapter legislation, AB 1460 by Assemblymember Shirley Weber. In addition to a request for additional resources to successfully implement this new policy, which will be presented by Vice Chancellors David O'Brien and Lizette Navarrete. I just wanted to share that our team is already in communications with Ed Services, College Finance and Facilities Planning Divisions, and our faculty partners in the Academic Senate to discuss implementation. The work is ongoing, and we hope to have more information for you at the November board meeting. And that concludes my section.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions from board members on the state legislation update? All right.
Thank you, and welcome, Ms. Vasquez. Nice presentation.
Thank you. So moving on, I'll take the federal policy and advocacy update next. This one will be brief. We do hate to be the bearer of bad news, but there has been, there still continues to be an impasse in Congress on negotiations around a potential fourth coronavirus stimulus package, which is called C4 in sort of Washington speak. The partisan divide on this one, quite frankly, appears to only grow week by week. You may recall that the House of Representatives on a narrow party line vote passed the HEROES Act all the way back in late May, which we supported, and we continue advocating for a strong and comprehensive relief package, not just for our system, but for the state of California. And as many of you are aware, part of our advocacy around that includes the use of total enrollment, also known as head count, rather than full-time equivalent enrollment in the formula for calculating allocation to institutions of higher education. We view that as an equity issue for community colleges, not just in California, but nationwide, due to the student demographic we serve. So we will keep the board updated on that, but at this point, many Washington pundit types are projecting that it's highly unlikely, close to impossible, that such a package passes before the election, especially given the partisan acrimony sure to come from the potential confirmation of a new Supreme Court justice. We do have a brief verbal update, which we hope will be good news to some of you. Board member Villalobos and others have been strong advocates, of course, for our student veterans. And some of you may have noted that a provision in the Student Veteran Coronavirus Response Act, which was authored by California's own Representative Mark Takano, was due to expire very shortly at the end of this month, in fact. However, there is rapid movement in the House to extend that provision by another year. We are hopeful that that will be acted on very shortly so that our veterans do not see any disruption in their educational benefits. Before I move on to better and more exciting news than the federal update, are there any questions on the federal policy update?
Dave, we're hearing that even if there is a stimulus that they would still take into account FTES and not head count. Is that correct?
So thank you, Board Member Salazar. Our question was around the use of FTES versus headcount in a fourth stimulus. That is still a point of contention. The HEROES Act passed by the House in May did use headcount. There are many higher education advocates who have been very vocal about wanting to use headcount or total enrollment. However, there is still some support in some quarters for full-time equivalent for FTES. So it could go either way. It could end up being split with part of the allocation formula using one and part using another, maybe 50-50. But we were pleased to see a strong showing of support for total headcount from organizations such as American Federation of Teachers, New America Foundation, Education Trust, TICAS, among many, many others. So it's still up in the air, but we continue to be strong advocates for a formula that will be equitable for community college students.
Thank you.
Of course.
Just out of curiosity, did the UC and CSU have a position on this issue?
To be honest with you, Board President, I don't know whether either system took an official position. However, I can tell you that, according to most calculations that are done, the use of full-time equivalent does provide those systems, more funding per dollar per student. But I would have to check to see whether they took an official position in advocacy or communications efforts.
We happen to have a member of the Board of Regents in the room. I wonder if he could enlighten us.
I'm not aware that there is an official position.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. All right. Seeing no further questions, scanning the, what are we calling it now, the Brady Bunch board. I will move on to a good news update, which is that we are approaching the week of October 19th, which will be our system's 4th annual Undocumented Student Action Week. This has become a really exciting tradition within the California Community Colleges system, and we want to thank the Board of Governors for their strong support for this effort year after year. There's an update here, so I won't repeat much of it, but the core focus of Undocumented Student Action Week is lifting up the voices of our undocumented students, providing them the tools and the resources that they need to advocate for themselves at the federal level, the state level, and at the campus institutional level. And this year, we're focused heavily on affordability and financial aid. Our big asks include federal legislation providing a pathway to citizenship and permanent DACA protection, access to federal financial aid for undocumented students, and at the state and campus level, similar efforts around financial aid, outreach, and modernization. Just want to take a quick moment. I know we're tight on time, but I want to thank our partners, including the League, the Foundation for California Community Colleges, Immigrants Rising, California Student Aid Commission, the Campaign for College Opportunity, the California Undocumented Higher Education Coalition, and our Academic Senate and Student Senate, all of whom have been such important partners. And if any board members want to find out more about the Action Week, how you can get involved or support, please feel free to reach out to us directly. I will make sure, you should all have it, but I will make sure you all have our contact information in the Government Relations Division. I want to once again thank the board so much for your support for Undocumented Student Action Week. Any questions there before I move on to the action item or resolution? All right, great, not seeing any. And so the final piece of the state and federal update is the reason this is included on the action items calendar. As with Proposition 16, which the board formally endorsed in July, we have brought forward a resolution supporting, declaring the board's support for Proposition 15, which is the Schools and Communities First initiative. And we want to thank our partners in CTA, CCA on this one. It's really helpful that they have provided so much leadership at the statewide level for this effort, and to bring it forward with a formal request for the board to support. A quick summary of the initiative, although many of you, it is political campaign season, so you may have seen flyers or ads on television for or against it. But Proposition 15 is sometimes referred to in sort of Sacramento terms as the split roll initiative. And what it would do is it would alter the way certain commercial properties, property taxes are assessed, so that they are assessed based on actual market value, not purchase price at the time of sale. This is something that many advocates in the K-12 education community have been promoting for years. The effect of the initiative would be to raise anywhere from $6 to about $11 billion annually for in property tax revenue for both local governments, cities and counties, as well as for K-12 school districts and community college districts. So these are funds that would primarily be raised at the local level. Based on our initial calculation, it is difficult to know, depending on how the actual revenues would play out and how the initiative would be implemented if it passed. It's difficult to estimate, but it could bring in as much as about $500 million or $500 million in new net funds for California community colleges throughout the state. And so we have included in the item a draft resolution declaring the board's support. I just want to close with, because General Counsel LaForestier would not let me get away without doing my regular declaration that as a state ballot measure, this does not represent the Chancellor's office declaring its official support for this. The Chancellor's office is a state agency, is not allowed to spend state agency funds officially supporting or opposing a ballot measure. However, the Board of Governors in an open public meeting such as this does have the right to declare its support via resolution.
Nicely done.
Thank you, General Counsel. Happy to take questions on this, and we have the resolution in front of you for a vote.
Thank you. Are there any board comments on this?
It's funding. You know I have a question.
Please
First of
go
all,
ahead.
I want to welcome Ms. Vasquez to the team. It's nice to see you in person and look forward to working with you. Dave, my question has to do with Prop 15 creates a new fund separate and apart from Prop 98. And as I understand it, there are allocations within that fund. Can you talk about what restrictions there are within the allocations, the split between local government, K-12, and community colleges? Is it a lockbox, so to speak, similar to 98?
We do understand it to be somewhat restrictive in terms of the formula. Somewhere around, I want to say half or a little bit more than half of the funds would be allocated to local governments. And so the remainder, and I apologize, I would have to look at a more in-depth analysis to answer this precisely, but we're happy to get back to you with more up-to-date information. The remaining, I want to say approximately 40% would be through K through 14. So within that, it's anticipated that community colleges would receive our standard approximately 11% carve out. So 11% of the roughly 40%, whatever that adds out to, is how we got the figure of up to 500 million. But yes, the understanding is that it is fairly restrictive in terms of the funds being locked in and designated for those purposes.
Any other board member questions, comments? Any public comments on any of these things we've discussed here?
Public comment period for this item is now open. Please use the raise hand feature in Zoom to make a comment to the board. If you are calling into the meeting, use *9 to activate the raise hand feature. A member of the Chancellor's office will call on you and allow you to speak your public comment. You have a maximum of 3 minutes.
Debbie Klein, you have control of your mic. You can address the board.
Thank you. Good afternoon again, President Epstein, Vice President Haynes, and members of the Board of Governors. This is Debbie Klein, President of the Faculty Association of California Community Colleges. I just wanted to comment on 2 of the items briefly. As a proud founding partner of the Undocumented Student Week of Action, FACCC is excited to partner in another successful advocacy week focusing on the needs of our undocumented students. And last spring, the FACCC board voted to prioritize Propositions 15 and 16. So between now and the election, the FACCC PAC is working tirelessly with our local unions, our student interns, and our community partners on the campaigns for Props 15 and 16. Thanks.
Any other public comment?
Yes, Eric Kalyamagi, you have control of your mic.
Thank you. So President Epstein, Vice President Haynes, members of the board, and Chancellor Oakley, I am again Eric Kalyamagi from the Community College Association. The Community College Association urges the Board of Governors to support this resolution. The Schools and Communities First initiative would reclaim, by our estimates, between $6 and $12 billion every year for schools, colleges, and local communities by reassessing large commercial properties, all while completely protecting homeowners, renters, small businesses, and agriculture. In 1978, when Proposition 13 was passed, it was billed as a protection for homeowners from concerns over rising property taxes. That was and remains a very good thing. However, it also contained a provision that enabled commercial property owners to largely avoid reassessment on their property. When Proposition 13 went into effect, commercial property owners were paying 45% of property taxes and residential homeowners were paying roughly 55%. Today, residential homeowners are shouldering 72% of the share of property taxes being paid, the other commercial part being only 28%. This disinvestment from Proposition 13 has perpetuated a funding crisis for both schools and local communities, such as cities. It has had an effect on all communities, with a disproportionate impact on communities of color and low-income families, and it has fueled some of the racial and economic inequality we see in California. Proposition 15 thus provides a historic opportunity to support schools and local governments and to ensure that big corporations pay a fair share. The estimated $11 billion in new commercial property tax revenue will provide additional funding for schools and local governments, and it is largely unrestricted. They may use this money as they see fit. This could include, as a partial list, mental health counseling, technology improvements, food pantries, maintenance, employee salaries, and public safety. 40% of the money raised goes to public K-14 schools, which is in addition to the guaranteed Prop 98 funds. Our estimates are it would be roughly equivalent to getting an additional 4% COLA. It's not going to go ahead and completely change the world, but 4% is a very good thing. Proposition 13's impacts have been multi-generational. Proposition 13 has stood for 40 years as a sort of third rail of politics because of the powerful forces behind it. But we now have the opportunity and coalition to make changes. Please join CTA, Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, Gavin Newsom, and me in supporting Proposition 15, the Schools and Communities First initiative. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. Any other public comments? Okay.
Hearing none, I'd like to move the support for Proposition 15.
Second.
Second by Villalobos. Okay, please call the roll.
Hildegarde B. Aguinaldo.
Aye.
Amy Costa.
Aye, for funds that will be continuously appropriated, which is a very good thing.
Tom Epstein.
Aye.
Felicia Escobar Carrillo.
Aye.
Cullum Fitzgerald.
Aye.
Jolena Grande.
Aye.
Pamela Haynes.
Aye.
Eleni Konolakis. Kim Perigo.
Aye.
Jennifer Perry.
Aye.
Bill Rawlings.
Aye.
Alma Salazar.
Aye.
Valerie Shaw.
Aye.
Blas Villalobos.
Aye.
Joseph Williams.
Aye.
Okay, motion carries. We're going to take a 5-minute break till 3:30. I wanted to let members of the public know, though, who were expecting to have the system budget request, item 4.5, heard. We're going to have to delay that because there's these next 4.7 and 4.8 have co-presenters who are only available at that time. So we're not entirely sure if we're going to be able to get to 4.5 today. We're going to do 4.7 and 4.8 next, and if we have time, we'll do 4.5. So with that, we'll take a short break. Hey, we're back in session with item 4.7. I will note that in the board packet, this was a very, very long item with lots of attachments. I'm hoping that the board has read a lot of this material and that we don't have to go through every little bit here today. And so we appreciate all the people that are here to help present this and how important it is, but we would like it to be as concise as possible. So with that, thank you all for being here, and I'll turn it over to Deputy Chancellor Gonzalez.
No pressure. Thank you, President Epstein. First, really incredibly thankful for the opportunity to take up this item today. Just so you know, we are joined by the SSCC President and the Vice President, Captain Esquire. They both were managing and, as you know, multitasking work and school. So really appreciative that you have decided to hear this item during the time that they could be here with us today. I'll highlight that we also sent you a PowerPoint. I do not plan on walking you through that entire PowerPoint, but I will hand it over to our Academic Senate President, Dolores Davison, and her team, who has been leading this work statewide. And then we'll also then hand it over to our SSCC President, Stephen Codur. What I would like to do is to just briefly walk you through the general framework and theory that we have been following over the last 9 months. First, you should know that this work, since the implementation work group was launched, has really been around setting a statewide structure and the expectations that we need to have for a system in order to make progress. This includes mobilizing to integrate DEI into the fabric of every statewide association in our system, and prioritizing key regulatory changes like item 4.2. So thank you for your vote of confidence today in helping us achieve one of the 68 DEI recommendations. I also want to note that while this work started in 2018, it continues to be challenging for our system. If you recall, we started this work in partnership with the last Academic Senate President, Dr. John Stanskas, who is here with us today. And we conducted statewide surveys presented at different conferences. We held a diversity summit. We developed professional development, specifically an online module for unconscious bias and cultural competency. This work continues to be about discomfort, fear, learning, and growth. And we do that in the middle of a statewide pandemic. We do that in the middle of ongoing challenges with fires, moving everything online. So I wanted to just highlight the context in which you're hearing this update. When we launched this work, though, this board was courageous enough to know that you had a statewide role in setting expectations for the largest system of public higher education in the nation. We launched this with a very clear theory of change. A theory of change that is grounded in state level leadership and the empowerment of local districts and communities. So as you know, this work has remained a priority. On June 3rd, the Chancellor released a call to action. And even though we are facing many different challenges, I wanted to share with you that the stakeholders that we are engaging at the statewide level as a part of the DI implementation work group and the Consultation Council remain committed to this work and the call to action. We also do this while also inspiring other organizations to change. Specifically, the Chancellor's Call to Action asks POST to change. ACCJC will soon also hear changes related to diversity, equity, and inclusion. And we have inspired other segments and other states who are inquiring about our implementation. So here we go, the first update on our implementation. And I will ask staff to put up the slides very quickly. And I will actually, because we have 3 new members and to set the context for the presentations by our statewide leaders who will be presenting, I'll highlight in our very first slide that what we were doing was really calling out the role at the statewide level. So the institutional strategies that needed to be driven by the Board of Governors. Then the interactional strategies, which require procedures and different changes at the local level, but also the Board of Governors help through templates, through guidance memos. And then lastly, individual strategies to transform worksite diversity, equity, and inclusion through individual actions and behaviors. So it requires all of us to make that transformation. Next slide, please. You adopted this work in 2018 after seeing data, and we highlighted the report that we also sent to the legislature, also one of the requirements in the 68 recommendations. Next slide. I also wanted to highlight for any of our new members that the board was very clear on why we needed to tackle this. One was our system's responsibility, which is in Title V, and you've just recently passed new regulations for Title V that would amend that work. Our commitment to student success, and very clearly this board's commitment to equity. Next slide. As a task force, the first observation was the need to improve our regulations, and that's the item that you just voted on earlier today. Next slide. And then here, what I'll briefly cover is just that what we were saying and what this board acted on was 2 things. One, that faculty and staff diversity is a driver for educational achievement and social mobility. And 2, that it really required this partnership at the local level, the statewide level, and then the individual, which is really difficult to change. So in short, this board agreed that the transformation was about changing a culture and moving away from a compliance mindset. Next slide. The board also identified the role of the Chancellor's Office in this work, and I highlighted what those roles are here. Next slide. You then moved on to adopt 3 different recommendations, which included the 68 recommendations in the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Plan, a new DI statement, and a request for funding, which you'll hear more about in an item that will be presented by Vice Chancellor Navarrete and Vice Chancellor O'Brien. To implement this board asked the Chancellor's Office to create a DEI implementation work group. Next slide. And we asked our statewide leaders to wear their statewide hat, which required a complete transformation of the work that we were doing, and really a key focus on collaboration, coordination, and communications. Next slide. We define our the procedures of engagement. And so I show those to you in your PowerPoint. Next slide. And very important here, which is what you'll hear from the two organizations that are joining me in presenting this, to systematically mobilize action in a short amount of time. We're talking about less than 9 months, because during COVID, we had to delay our meetings as well. We asked our associations who were at the table to do 4 things. The first was to adopt DEI as a priority for their annual goals. The second was to integrate DEI into their organizational structures. The third was to make DEI a priority topic at their annual conference and at all of their professional development. And the fourth was to collaborate with system partners, those in the implementation work group at the statewide level, but also those that they are convening through their own internal structures. And I'll highlight here that that was done through an educational lesson that we did in the implementation work group, modeled after the Academic Senate. So they were the first ones to try this out. Very importantly here, this is important work because California's community college districts are independently operated by locally elected trustees and the leaders that they employ. And so this work needs to be a part of the fabric of every organization in our system and every district. Next slide. And I wanted to show you quickly the incredible work that our associations have done. 7 out of 8 have already made progress on their work plans to implement the 68 recommendations. Specifically, this week on the 24th, we'll meet to discuss a master work plan at the statewide level, even though we've already achieved many of the recommendations. And 22 different internal organizational work groups, task forces, committees have already started this work. And that's really where the work will begin to trickle up, but also out, right? Because it requires a lot of coordination. ACRO, Academic Senate, many other groups need to be discussing this outside of the statewide table and the 4-hour meetings that we have. Next slide. So while the work group has only met 6 times, we're very proud of this progress. I wanted to briefly share where we're heading next. So this is what we have accomplished. As President Epstein highlighted, this is already in your very detailed report. Next slide. This is where we're heading next and by the end of the year, and the work that we are asking this board to do, which is supporting and publicly affirming that all tier 1 recommendations, which we already knew could be implemented within existing resources and within 6 to 12 months, should continue to be a priority. So we need to release guidance memos at the statewide level, deploy a system DEI glossary, which is a key product of this work group, provide additional professional development, and very specifically update our EEO regulations, EEO plan template, and EEO allocation formula, and that work has already been started. Next slide. I also wanted to highlight this for the board because I think you'll hear some of this as a part of the public comment period, but also I wanted to highlight the work that is truly ahead and probably the most challenging part of this work. As we make progress, we will need to wrestle with some really key important tensions. First, we need to continue to integrate DEI into the vision for success, particularly around curriculum. And the Chancellor called this out in his call to action on June 3rd. The DEI integration actually asked us to do this work specifically through the development of performance evaluations. There were a series of recommendations related to faculty, staff, and administrators. As a part of this work and as a part of transforming a culture, this cannot be done as a single course, right? So we're not talking about just adding an ethnic studies course as a requirement, but we're talking really about a joint partnership around curriculum and evaluations, around meeting students' needs by decolonizing curriculum. And I know that you've been hearing that around the state as well. The second thing is that we need to continue to navigate and collaborate to address barriers to DEI. While we're asking our statewide partners to help us redesign with the statewide hat on, they have raised concerns about how this gets implemented at the local level. And what that actually means is really concerns around local labor contracts that may conflict with this board's DEI priorities. And lastly, we need to continue to align and integrate DEI into all of our professional development. So today, next slide, I'm going to begin to conclude my remarks. The Chancellor's Office Internal Implementation Team is asking for 4 things. Verbally, we know where we are. We know that this additional federal backdrop, the challenges that we have seen in 2020, because it's 2020, have only proven that this work is even more important than it ever was in 2018 and in 2019. So specifically, the Chancellor's Office is asking the board to consider their continued support for this work and the expedited timeline. Support for the process that we have been following, which is the DEI implementation work group produces an outcome in partnership with our statewide organizations. It then goes to the EEO and Diversity Advisory, and then the Consultation Council before it can come to this board. We also appreciate the continued support around additional resources, and you'll hear more about this in item 4.5, but the implementation work group continues to see this as a potential barrier as we head into tier 2 recommendations, which we knew would require additional resources. And then lastly, for consideration today, which makes this an action item, is your support to establish the California Community College Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Awareness Month. This was the DEI Integration Plan recommendation to celebrate and provide legitimacy to community college leaders who are championing DEI. So with that, I would like to now hand it over to our Academic Senate President, Dolores Davidson, who will introduce her colleagues. And then from there, I will then introduce our student leaders.
Thank you, Deputy Chancellor Gonzalez, Board President Epstein, Vice President Haynes, Chancellor Oakley. I am Dolores Davidson. I'm President of the Academic Senate for California Community Colleges. I want to thank Deputy Chancellor Gonzalez for all of her work with this and for pulling the Academic Senate in from the very first and actually having our past president co-chair. I am joined today with our 2 representatives on the DEI implementation work group, Dr. John Stanskis, our immediate past president, and Professor Mayra Cruz, our treasurer. They are going to walk you through the work that we've done until essentially June, when the transition, when John termed out and I took over. And then we'll talk about what we're looking for forward to going forward at this point. So John, can we see the next slide, please? And go ahead, John.
Thanks, Dolores. Good afternoon, President Epstein, Vice President Haynes, Chancellor Oakley, and members of the Board of Governors. I haven't had to say that in a while. Nice to see you. I know you're on a time crunch, and I'm certain that you've looked over all of this material for you. I hope that you see that there are resources embedded in the PowerPoint slides, and there are live links. If you wish to have more information, that you can go find that information fairly easily. I'll start by telling you this is the work of the Chancellor's Office and the Academic Senate for the last 2 years, or 2.5 years now. And last year's goals of the Academic Senate were that we charged our committees to really make intentional efforts to make progress on this. The Academic Senate made faculty diversification a top priority, and we strategized to have a decentralized, collaborative working group within the Academic Senate's existing structures and with faculty across our state as a way to include information as possible. We collaborated with our system partners, the CSSOs, the student services officers, the chief instructional officers, the league, ACRO, our human resources officers, and the Chancellor's Office to try to get as many voices and perspectives as possible, because it will take all of us to make progress in this work. And we agendized the topic of faculty diversification at every meeting. So every meeting of the executive committee had this as an agenda item, and if there was nothing to report out, then we talked about why. Why not? And that was a way that we were able to move forward to look at evaluating the minimum qualification that says that you need to have a sensitivity to the students that we serve. What does that mean? How do you actionabilize that? We worked on an equity-driven systems paper that was adopted and began work. I believe Dolores will talk to you about the anti-racism resolution and inclusivity statement and the resulting paper from that. We created tools for colleges to engage in dialogue and systemic change. We have been working with the Chancellor's Office about the EEO guidelines. And I really am excited to turn it over to Myra Cruz to talk to you about the model hiring principles and procedures that we released at the end of last academic year as a resource created by the Academic Senate, but in collaboration with many, many other partners across our system for colleges looking at changing their culture. So let me say next slide and turn it over to Myra Cruz.
Thank you, Dr. Stanskis and President Davison. Good afternoon, President Epstein, Vice President Haynes, and members of the Board of Governors, as well as colleagues and the public. We're once again excited to be here with you. And certainly looking forward to what we intend to do at this moment. Actually, on the chat, I'm going to paste the link. Sorry about I hit the little return without the link, and so I thought it would be in the interest of time. You may want to open the link and take a look at some of what we're going to be reviewing with you today. So the Faculty Leadership Development Committee, in collaboration with the Equity and Diversity Action Committee, and as Dr. Stanskis mentioned, with the many system partners, we had an opportunity to actually develop a tool that in fact will be able to help us do a better job in hiring, and as we think about hiring. And so when what I like to highlight is the following. So the model that you see the page, the main page of our website for the State Academic Senate, and then certainly the link on the side that I posted on the chat. So the module that was developed consists on three parts. And there's the first part is a pre-hiring, the second is hiring, and then it's the third one is post-hiring. So organized in the way that is directly related to our hiring processes that are utilized by our colleges and districts. Each module has various processes to review that may be similar to campus processes, but the difference is that each of them includes principles, equity-minded principles, and guiding questions, and the equity framework to support then the development and the review of existing hiring processes. So you can start when you look at the module, and I don't know if we have an opportunity to go into the module. Would that be okay? Can we do that? Or maybe I just leave it up.
Controlling the PowerPoint slide, can you click the link?
Yes, thank you.
Myra, go ahead and keep chatting as the staff is pulling that up.
Okay, great, thank you. So, once we get the module up, you're going to see that the course is designed. Thank you very much. The course is designed to be a resource and includes model activities tailored to campuses, along with resources and to use. And so if I may, I'm going to ask if you please click on modules. Thank you. So for faculty leaders and others, HR offices and departments, this is a module that allows you to take a look at the various parts of the hiring process and the different tools associated with each of these areas of the hiring process. So each of the topics includes equity-minded principles. Each of the topics include guiding questions and the equity framework, as well as dialogue model activities that are resources and tools for colleges and districts to take a look at. So if I may, you scroll down, please, to the equivalency module. Equivalency processes right here. So please click on equivalency principles, guiding questions, and the equity framework. And if you scroll down slowly, you can see what I'm referencing. So a set of the equity principles, a set of guiding questions, and the framework for this particular module. Can you go back to the equivalency processes? Previous, thank you. And then actually, if we go back to the modules itself, and then back to the equivalency processes. So then you also notice that there is samples of materials that we can utilize to be able to advance hiring, certainly faculty hiring for our system. There's the way in which actually this particular module and tool has been developed is with the iterative and co-creation kind of perspective and model in mind. So we start a set of tools, and we hope that as we continue to work with our DEI partners, that we would evolve and expand the work that you see here. And we hope that this would be a very important tool then to guide the processes and revisions to processes for colleges and districts, as well as the most important part, things that we need to consider and tools that we can have for professional development of hiring committee members. And so with that, I thank you for your time.
Thank you. You can go back to the regular PowerPoint now and advance the slide, please. I will close out by reiterating that we did, thank you. The Academic Senate did issue just before this tool to help colleges our call to action to local Senate presidents, which I thought was important. And the Academic Senate thought was important to talk to local Senate presidents. And this is what we asked them to do. We asked them to make agendas that include anti-racism, no hate education, and reassured them that it was okay if they didn't have any answers. And I think that's really important for much of our system as we engage, to be okay with they might not have some answers, but we'll get together and talk about it. To prioritize culturally responsive curricular redesign, to acknowledge that the college houses the biases and prejudices of its founding time, and that we are in a position, we as an institution are in a position to address those biases. To redesign the evaluation and hiring of faculty members is something that local academic senates have some influence over. To request help, that it's okay to request help, and to find the voices among faculty that are missing in governance and include them intentionally and directly. And lastly, to create constructive ways students can express themselves as we grapple with how to modify our institutions and make them better. All the faculty in the system that I have met are called to a duty of service to help students achieve their goals and dreams. And so once we can engage that work and empower faculty, students, classified staff, local boards of trustees, that they have some autonomy to make changes to influence how our institutions operate, I think they will. And the support of the Board of Governors is crucial to making that happen. The support of the Chancellor's Office is crucial to making that happen. I am happy to turn it over to my successor, Dolores Davison, the President of the Academic Senate, to carry us out.
And I'd like to thank John for his PowerPoint skill. That is something I lack and he does not, so I'm greatly appreciative. Can I have the next slide, please? So this year, instead of setting goals, we decided to set areas of focus, recognizing that goals are often finite and these are not things that would be finite. As you can see, we have 3 of them, which I've already mentioned to the Board of Governors previously. The equity-driven systems, under which we include the Faculty Empowerment Leadership Academy, which is our new mentoring program that we just launched. The faculty diversification and the DEI and DEI work also falls under that. Our guided pathways implementation and integration for both transfer and careers with an equity focus, and then culturally responsive student services, student support, and curriculum. John mentioned our new inclusivity statement, which was passed by our plenary body last November. We have a resolution coming forward around our anti-racism pledge and our anti-racism work. We have a paper that was just approved by the executive committee on Friday afternoon to be sent forward to the body on anti-racism. So you can tell that we're not slowing down with this work. We're ramping it up. Next slide, please. I'm very cognizant of President Epstein's not talking too much, and you don't say that to faculty, President Epstein. We like to talk, but I'll keep it to a minimum. The resources that Myra already mentioned are very important. We've already had a number of our other stakeholder partners take a look at those and start to add and subtract. We have other resources here for folks to take a look at. I want to make it clear that the creation of resources is not enough. We need money for professional development. We need to be able to provide that professional development to the field. We need to be able to utilize these tasks and these different pieces for systemic change at our colleges. And without that professional development and without that interaction, it will be difficult for that systemic change to occur. We continue to collaborate on all of this with our stakeholder partners around the system. We are delighted to work with all of them. And the hiring processes and the other pieces that we're doing are just part of the work that the Academic Senate has taken on. And Deputy Chancellor Gonzalez, you're going to need to update the slide because we assigned 2 new committees to work on DEI work. So we are up to 6 now that are doing DEI work of our standing committees. May I have the next slide, please? So here are some more resources that we have. You are welcome to go to our website or to reach out to us at any time. I want to make sure that everyone is aware that our plenary theme for this year is addressing anti-Blackness and ideas in academic and professional matters. And the ideas stand for inclusion, diversity, equity, and anti-racism. We would welcome any of the members of the Board of Governors to attend. Please let me know if you're interested. And I look forward to answering any of your questions. Thank you very much.
President Epstein, you do have presentations by the students, but if you'd like to pause here for questions, we'll defer to you.
I think I'd like to get through the whole thing first, if that's possible. I appreciate the incredible brevity of the Academic Senate. We still would encourage even more brevity going forward. So I'm happy to hear from the students.
Well, thank you, President Epstein. With that, I'd like to introduce our Student Senate leaders, the President, Stephen Kodur, and Catherine Esquire, the Vice President of the SSCCC. Catherine serves on the DEI Implementation Work Group, and they have done tremendous work in less than a month. I think it was even shorter than that. They published an anti-racism action plan, a lot of integration with the work that you've already adopted, but it certainly shows us how urgent this work is for our students. So with that, Stephen, we'll hand it over to you.
Dr. Gonzalez, and good evening, good afternoon, President Epstein, Vice President Haynes, members of the board, and our honored attendees that are here, Chancellor Oakley, and everyone else. Just thank you. And President Epstein, we're really, as students, one for brevity. You don't know how many times we love getting out of class early. So that's, I think, one of the reasons we decided not to do a PowerPoint today. We've seen enough of those in our Zoom classes, so we're going to power on without a PowerPoint. But I just want to thank the board specifically for taking up this DEI work. We really appreciate it. DEI is really fundamental to student success. You know, the reason why I've tried a university, I came back, I did university for undergrad, but I came back to community college. And the main reason is because of the community that comes before the college, right? The community college is there for the community, but it also encompasses a community feeling on each campus. And for me, I stuck at Reedley College. I'm a student at Reedley College, and I love Reedley College, the family environment that I get there. So you can understand my discouragement, my frustration when I hear student stories about how they weren't given that family environment that I got at my college. So we're really here as students to be able to try and push this diversity, equity, inclusion, getting students included on every campus, making them feel welcomed. So the SSCCC really took this up. We really wanted to make sure that students were at the forefront. We tackled this twofold. We did one fold, which Vice President Catherine Squire is going to get to in a second, where we did our DEI, the recommendations that were brought forward, and we really implemented that through our organization. And then, as Dr. Gonzalez said, we convened an institutional success for people of color task force, which created an action plan moving forward of what the students really think that diversity, equity, and inclusion would look like on each campus. So before I go into the action plan, I'm going to turn it over to my Vice President, Catherine Squire, who's a great student leader out of our Region 2 area, and she's going to brief you on the DEI recommendations and how they pertain to the SSCCC.
Thank you so much, Stephen. Hello, everyone. My name is Catherine Squire. I'm the Vice President for the SSCCC. And so I just want to talk about some of the things that we've been up to since our involvement with the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Implementation Work Group. Since our involvement, we have created several supporting structures within our organization to help provide a focused and dedicated approach to these implementation strategies. The first of these structures being creating a Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion subcommittee within our own organization. And so we found a number of dedicated, talented students who represented a variety of diverse backgrounds and experiences. And so this committee's sole purpose was to implement the strategies while engaging students to keep each project, including those that we are part of as a collaborating organization, student-centered and designed with diversity and equity in mind. And so in alignment with this purpose, our committee continued to take further steps to integrate DEI values into our organization's mission, priorities, and professional development. And we have several ongoing projects to support this move, including the recent adoption of our DEI statement by our board of directors at our last meeting, as well as the development of a statement which we have sent out to our student body associations at the local level for them to also adopt their own statements and share with their respective campus partners. We wanted to make sure this was our first priority in order to help ensure every single one of our colleges in California was working to solidify this collective commitment to putting this work at the forefront. And so in addition to that, our committee is continuing to work on providing training to our own board of directors, developing workshops for each of our 10 regions, as well as several workshops for our upcoming professional development conference, which actually begins at the end of this week and will run for a week through the beginning of October. And so our intention, obviously, to be able to reach our students at the most basic level possible, and also to educate our student population on embracing their own diversity, but also teaching them how embracing that diversity, identifying their own biases, and developing an equity mindset can help them be better advocates and representatives of the student populations that exist on their campus, and how valuable it is for them as student leaders to continue inserting their perspectives and backgrounds in every area which affects the daily lives of their students. In addition to that, lastly, we have been striving to activate many of our caucuses, which embody DEI principles by building communities for our API, women, African American, Latinx, and LGBTQ+ students, although we anticipate this number of communities to soon grow through our outreach efforts. And so moving forward, we remain committed to prioritizing our involvement with professional support to classified staff so that they are able to build capacity and career growth with an emphasis in equity and diversity, providing faculty and staff mentoring opportunities at our college, as well as in alignment with continuing to foster open lines of communication and dialogue in order to further the move toward including students on hiring committees. And so while we have had many successes in advancing our work, we have run into one consistent barrier. I do want to just mention one of our discoveries in our work having to do with the legal opinion released by the General Counsel of the Chancellor's Office, which found that although there's no legal prohibition against student participation in faculty or classified hiring processes, the decision of whether or not to include students remains a matter of local policy. And so we remain optimistic that in collaborating with partner organizations, as well as the Chancellor's Office, we'll be able to work around any additional local legal barriers that may present themselves, which would be contradictory to the best practices agreements of the Board of Governors Diversity.
Did we lose Catherine?
I'm afraid, Catherine, that you're frozen.
Oh, no.
Stephen, do you want to pick up?
Yeah, I could just pick up there. So as Catherine was saying, you know, the legal opinion came out recently. And what we're really striving for in the SSCCC, you know, we really worked on the DEI implementation, right? It was a lot of, hey, let's get a mission statement that includes diversity, equity, inclusion. Let's have conversations, right? We're forming committees and having conversations, but now it's time to take action. That's the deal, right? It's one thing to talk about the situation, but it's another to actually say, this is the tangible way to see this on campuses, right? This is what this looks like. And as far as what Catherine was saying with students getting into the hiring process, that's one tangible way that we can see diversity, equity, and inclusion. We see students sitting in the room being able to provide their sense of input into that conversation to say, this is the person we want to see that reflects the type of environment that we have on this campus, that reflects what I look like on my campus, right? We said it was 73% students of color back in 2016. I'm sure that number has gone up, but we have 61% of white tenured faculty on campus. Let's start to have those conversations and break down those barriers. So as far as the Institutional Success for People of Color Task Force, I want to touch on this briefly with you all. Thank you, Christina, for putting the link into the chat. As I was saying, we want to see tangible proof on what this looks like on campuses. So the ISPCTF, as we call it, we convened a task force, or the SSCCC convened this task force, the ISPCTF, and our main focus was to just get into the room and have students start to talk. So we convened 2 town halls. We had the students come, and we said, we're just here to listen. We want to hear what you have to say about how diversity, equity, and inclusion affects you on each of your campuses. And then now we can form an action plan from that. So we had 2 of them. We had over 300 registrants, which was awesome. Students came, they gave us a huge amount of information. They showed up and they were there. We even had faculty and staff in on the conversation and directing some of the questions. And what we really did as a task force is we recorded it, we took it over, and we looked it over, and we focused on 5 main pillars of what the students were saying. And this is our action plan coming from those town halls. The first one was cultural awareness and respect. We wanted to embody a cultural awareness and respect on each campus. And what does that look like? Well, one is confronting and addressing racial profiling and microaggressions, address the issue and confront it. It's creating an environment where students can thrive while being their authentic selves. We had a student who said he didn't feel welcomed in a classroom because of the style of his hair. He had a professor that told him that style of hair wasn't going to work with students that were sitting behind him. You know, we want students to be their authentic selves and be able to embrace that diversity that they have. The second pillar was equity training. We want to provide students an opportunity to be involved in equity training development. Here's the thing, if you have equity training on your campus, hey, and the equity training says when an issue like this arises with a student, this is how you respond. How are we supposed to have that if the students aren't saying, this is how I want to be responded to? The students should be in the room saying, hey, this is how the training should be developed, because this is how I want to be responded to when this situation arises in comparison to me. We want to require student orientations to include anti-racism and microaggression training, students' rights in the grievance process, and where to go to report instances of racism and microaggression. Students come to a campus. They need to know, one, they need to first be trained, but second, they need to know what are their rights in the grievance process. Is there a process already established on campus? My campus doesn't have anywhere for me to go to say, hey, this is a complaint that I have, you know, where can I take this? Right now, that doesn't happen. I'm grateful to be a student leader, so I know where to go, but as a normal everyday student that goes to class, goes home, they have no way to express their grievances through a process. So we really want to be able to establish those on campus. The third was curriculum changes. We don't want to just see ethnic studies. That's one of the things. We want to see ethnic studies on our campuses. We want to see ethnic centers, cultural study departments. That's all part of our plan. But we also want to integrate Black history, Black contributions, other contributions of people of color and culture into all of our curriculum. Why can't we have Black contributors to philosophy, to biology? Let's weave that into all of our curriculum. Our fourth was peer mentors and alliances. The students were saying, we need some help, some resources. Where can I go to? Where are my student mentors at? So we want to facilitate communication between the student groups. We have Black student unions on campus. There's Latinx caucuses on campus. So we want to connect them and understand the points of view and what they go through. We should have, the student government should be reaching out to those students and getting them into the conversations in those governance committees that are happening on campus. We want to form a participatory governance committee that specifically addresses diversity, equity, and inclusion with representatives from the Student Body Association and faculty, so students have a platform for policy recommendations and administrative remedies. So on my campus specifically, we had an equity subcommittee of the student services. That wasn't good enough. We don't want just a subcommittee that just lasts for a little while and then it dissolves, right? This dealing of equity is going to last forever. We are always going to have to deal with equity on our campuses. So we need an equity committee to be ingrained into these campuses. So let's get students and faculty in the room and start having that conversation. And then the last one was just classroom experience. So we want to hire more diverse faculty in all pathways. And hiring more diverse faculty, that's one thing, but like I was saying earlier, we need to get students into the process of hiring these diverse faculty members. Let students be allowed into that room to be in that process to handle that. And then we want to require anti-racism statements, information on where to go to find those student grievances processes, and where to go to talk to someone when experiencing microaggressions or other racial inequities. We want all of that to go into a syllabus, right? If a student takes a class,
They're required to have a syllabus. So why can we not have that be a part of the syllabus, be a part of the Canvas as a shell, so that students have that information readily available to them if they're not going to get it or they're not going to receive it, you know, just walking the halls of a school. So, you know, that's really the basis of our action plan. There's so much more in there. We have sent it out to our system partners. We would love for you to take a look at it and help us as students embody a culture of diversity, equity, and inclusion. We thank you so much for the work that you do and for taking up this issue. But yes, we as students, we're here to be supports, but also to get supported. So that's why we're here. So thank you so much.
Thanks, Stephen and Catherine. I think this has been a pretty lengthy presentation. Are we able to have the board make their comments now?
Yes, President Epstein, and I would take comments and questions.
And questions, and I do want to point out that we have another item that has people from outside speakers that needs to be finished by 5 p.m. today. So I would encourage the board to be disciplined about how much more time we spend on this matter, so that we don't end up having people who showed up here to participate not being able to. So with that, Member Perigo.
I can be very brief. A big thank you to everybody who presented. This was really great to hear all the work that's going on. My question is for ASCCC, and if you can tell me, and I don't know if your ASCCC model hiring principles and procedures is a new primer you have coming out, but I'm just curious if you don't have primers on these things, if you're going to create them or update the primers that you do currently have on evaluations, hiring, and professional development. I'm just wondering if that's in the works right now.
I can answer that, Kim. So the modules on hiring are out. They are a primer essentially on equitable hiring practices. We worked on those for the better part of a year, and we are adding to them on a regular basis based on contributions from our stakeholders and other partners around the system, or stakeholder partners around the system. The piece about evaluation is something that is going to be, has just been tasked to our Standards and Practices Committee to specifically look at that. We are also working with our colleagues with ACRO. We are in conversations with them. And I believe that the FACCC is convening a group of union representatives to have a discussion about this as well. I know that Debbie has her hand up, so perhaps she can talk about that when she is on as part of their responsibility. And what was the third one? I apologize, Kim.
Professional development. And I just bring these up because I just want ASCCC to know that these are really good resources for faculty, and professional development in particular is kind of all over the board in terms of how much exists in any given district. And so, you know, I just want to encourage you that if they don't exist, to continue to develop them, because we do use them and they are important in our ability to understand our responsibilities and roles in these ways, and especially if it's sort of lacking in other ways in our world.
No, we're very appreciative of that. And any suggestions that board members have, or, you know, Board Member Perigo, if you hear things from other faculty that want something, let us know. And if we don't have it, we can certainly talk about ways to bring it to fruition.
Thank you.
Other board member comments? Member Fitzgerald.
Thank you, President Epstein. You know, I had a comment prepared, but I was kind of blown away by the presentations. I think that this is like the dream team of presenters, right? I mean, it's so good to see some familiar faces come back around as well from the Academic Senate. I wanted to point out, you know, one really important part of both presentations, and that was in the Academic Senate's presentation, number 7, create constructive ways students can express themselves. And it was reflected in the Student Senate's talking about the need to be included in hiring committees. I think that when we talk about diversity, equity, inclusion, specifically in faculty diversification, one of the greatest ways to ensure that is possible in our institutions is to give our students a role in helping make sure that the faculty that teach them look like them, that they can relate to them. And if we, like Stephen said, enfranchise our students in this way, that will go so far into helping accomplish this shared goal between faculty and student. And one startling fact is, over 50% of our districts still believe it's illegal to give students a vote and a voice in this way. But we know from a September 10th Chancellor's Office, a legal opinion that was mentioned, I think, by the SSCCC, that it's not illegal. In fact, any policies that go against giving students a voice are in direct conflict with what the DEI work is. So it's not that it's illegal, it's that it's like the complete opposite. I really hope that we will seriously consider enfranchising students in this way. And I want to end with a question to specifically Deputy Chancellor Daisy Gonzalez. What is the Chancellor's Office doing to ensure that these districts that are in direct conflict with the DEI work in this way, what is the Chancellor's Office doing to ensure that these policies are remedied?
Thank you, Board Member Fitzgerald. I want to thank first our General Counsel's Office for working on that legal opinion. As you know, any association can request a legal opinion. What we have found was, one, the question was very clear. What they wanted us to answer, is this illegal, yes or no? The next step is really to clarify that for the field. We have been working with ACRO, and they are very committed to ensuring that this is clarified in our system. So I will say, though, that this is something that we are tracking. It will require regulatory changes for the Board of Governors and many different conversations with our statewide partners to ensure that if there are any labor contracts that prohibit this, that we are engaging in communication statewide, right, so that it can be implemented fully. I will say that I think your percentage sounds pretty accurate in our conversation with ACRO. There are some districts that are confused, others that are already doing the right thing, and then there are those that feel that it is illegal because of a local labor contract. But we are committed, we are tracking this work, and it is a part of the work that we hope to update you on at your March 2021 board meeting, as crazy as that sounds.
So just a quick response. I heard you mentioned that it might require possible regulatory action. Are you referring to like a Title V change that would be necessary? Yes. Okay. All right. Yeah, I just want to put it out there. I would be extremely supportive of such a change.
Okay, Member Aguinaldo.
Thank you very much, President Epstein. I wanted to express my gratitude to the Academic Senate and the Student Senate for the presentation, the exceptional reports, all the work that we can see, but also for all the work that we cannot see. We've heard many courageous voices come forward and talk about their experiences, and some of those voices come from very familiar faces who are only feeling comfortable right now talking about their struggles for the first time. I think of what Lena Carew of the Justice Collective stated in her presentation during the Chancellor's Student-Centered Institutions Diverse Faculty Retention webinar that was held on June 4. She said, "There's greater intimacy here. You are now in our homes." And if you haven't had a chance to watch that webinar, please do. So in this context, I see the ask to the board is more than reasonable, including and especially number 4, which is the request for the board to adopt the resolution recognizing all Aprils going forward as Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Awareness Month. I hope that the rationale behind the recognition that was outlined in our materials resonates with you, that in a small way we are offering protection to people who are putting their homes at risk. So I hope the board will join me in adopting this resolution supporting the other 3 requests. Thank you.
Okay, Member Rawlings.
Thank you. A couple points real quick. Actually, to Member Fitzgerald's point, it reminds me of a disability rights campaign slogan that was something along the lines of, nothing about me done without me is for me. So we need to make sure that as we talk about diversity, equity, inclusion, that we are actually being inclusive in bringing people into the process as we grow. And that brings me to my other thought is, there are a number of things in the recommendations in the report and in all this, the great presentations today. There's a few things there that may, at the local level, get a little more controversial. And I think what's really important is that we recognize that everyone is at a different place in their journey towards anti-racism, and that we need to encourage that. And one of the ways that we encourage that is really by bringing people along with us rather than imposing on, right? So I think we need leaders at the local level, and those leaders at the local level need to be leading those conversations and then bringing all the other local organizations along. At the same time, our statewide organizations are trying to push their organizations along. So it's really going to take everyone to do this, but we really need those local leaders to step up and bring people along the journey with them.
Great. Are there any other board member comments? Member Costa.
Yeah, so it's just amazing how much work's been done since we last heard this item. So kudos to everyone. I think it's really pretty amazing what's been accomplished so far. My question is potentially for Deputy Chancellor Gonzalez, although others can weigh in, which is, I heard the Academic Senate talk about the need for resources, and I know you described kind of the tier 1 recommendations of those that we could do basically within our existing resources. And I believe last year we had a board budget request to help kind of support this work. I know we're going to talk about it tomorrow, but can you talk a little bit about what happened in the current year budget with our request, and also, how do we continue this momentum in light of kind of our economic reality right now, hearing that, resources will clearly be needed here?
Thank you for the question, Board Member Costa. I think what's important is for us to keep saying what we've been saying, which is this is the right thing to do, right? We were very clear that tier 1 could be done within existing resources because we needed to change the way that we were acting and the way that we were structuring ourselves, which guides the way that our behavior, right? And the way that we can interact in our institutions. As we head into tier 2, we're really talking about the accountability piece. And I knew that this question would come up, but what's really important to the accountability piece is the recommendations that have been identified related to this DEI integration plan. So for example, the CCC registry, right, which is one space where individuals can go in and look for jobs and apply. The other big piece is really around data. Right now, our EEO plans are a part of the problem, right? It's a part of the template. We didn't ask our districts and colleges for that information. So we need to create an online repository for that. And one way is the EEO plan template. But what our ACRO partners, and those are HR professionals in our system, will tell you is what we really need is one space where you can get that data, that information. As well as hiring. I think we've been very clear from the very beginning, unless you begin to offer more full-time faculty hiring positions, right? It doesn't matter how many rules you've changed. If there are no positions, we can't really transform. But within a resource-constricted environment, which is where we continue to operate under, our focus really is changing the culture. And our students have been very clear in their presentation today. If we already have faculty and they are in our system, not just our faculty, but our classified employees, our administrators as well, right? There's a lack of diversity there too. They all need to start interacting with their students in a very different way. So in some ways, it's not any different than the conversations that we've been having around guided pathways, the conversations that we've been having about AB 705. Our system is in the middle of a transformation, and that's what I mean by integrating DEI, right? I hope that answered the question.
Okay, Vice President Haynes.
So thank you. I really appreciate the presentation, and I'm not going to keep you for very long. There's certain things that I just want to point to. One, students need to be involved up and down this process. And the other piece of this is curriculum is critically important. And I recognize that faculty have a lot of say to that. And I recognize and I really appreciate the comment, we don't have all the answers. But you need to have people in the room that can help you with the answers. So I would really encourage this body, and I recognize that all of this work, for the most part, has to get done at the local level. And so the breaking down of silos wherever they are, and they permeate our colleges, has to happen. I've read wonderful call to actions and to bring those voices in. The way to bring those voices in is to break down the silos in which classified talk to classified, faculty talks to faculty, students talk to students. It has got to be all of us talking, even though those conversations I absolutely believe will be uncomfortable. We all have to be hearing those conversations in order to build consensus and to build solutions that make sense on our campuses. This is the beginning work and it's critically important, but we've got to break down the silos to have these conversations, not among each other, but among us all, because we won't get there otherwise.
Thanks. Member Williams.
Thank you, President Epstein. I have the pleasure of serving or participating in the Chancellor's Equity Trustee Fellowship. And it's a tremendous learning experience. Some of the stuff that we're grappling with in the fellowship has just really been very, very helpful for our district. And as it relates to faculty hiring, we know that students of color would benefit from more full-time faculty, and specifically faculty that look like them. As a system or as a board, is there ever a discussion about new revenues? Because in order for districts to add more faculty of color, when you think about the attrition, folks aren't retiring at the rates that we really need them to in order to diversify full-time faculty. And so has there ever been any talk about how to help districts think about, or how the system can think about new revenue that currently doesn't come into the system? Like the CPUC right now is talking about equity as it relates to how infrastructure investment is taking place. And they have a lot of language in their proposed decision about education and outreach to communities. And, I don't know, there might be an opportunity for classes around infrastructure, but has there been a conversation about how to generate new revenues? Because without more money coming into the system, I don't see how we diversify full-time faculty at a fast enough pace that, keeps up with, the dialogue of it. And so local districts do need more money in order to do it based, and how I see how our local system is working. So again, has there been any conversations about how to generate new revenues?
President Epstein, I might make a suggestion that if Prop 15 passes, which our board just passed the resolution, maybe we could direct the Chancellor's office to look at the revenues derived from that to support this work, to my colleague's point.
Sure. If we're fortunate enough to get that money, I think that would be a great use of it. And but we'd want to have our normal budget process, I think, to evaluate priorities. I think that's what would be our responsibility, but it certainly seems it would be near the top of the list.
Just to quickly chime in, Board Member Williams, we are certainly always looking for new revenue sources. We also are continuing to work with our districts to ensure that their full-time faculty obligations are met, that we're giving them every opportunity to continue to hire faculty, and certainly the decision of budget prioritization is with the trustees, and we continue to encourage the trustees to carve out resources to do this work. We in the Chancellor's office will continue to ask the legislature for support to help implement this work as we have in the past. Unfortunately, the budget is going to be difficult going forward, so I don't anticipate many new resources, but certainly Proposition 15 is an important part of this conversation as we go to the ballot in November.
Okay, I see Member Parago. Oh, very briefly.
It is, I'm sorry, I just missed a quick note. So I just wanted to ask the Chancellor's office specifically to continue to get data out to the system. Like if we're going to talk about curriculum changes, we really need to start understanding better why equity gaps are continuing to plague us in success and persistence, and any data that we can get that helps us with that, helps us with curriculum design. So I just want to ask you to please keep a focus there and please get that data out to the system.
Thank you. So I think we're ready for public comment now. I assume there is some.
Yes. Debbie Klein, I'm going to go ahead and unmute you, and then you can address the board.
Thank you. Good afternoon again, President Epstein, Vice President Haynes, Chancellor Oakley, and members of the Board of Governors. This is Debbie Klein again. Thank you, Dr. Gonzalez and the team, for your hard work and an inspiring presentation. FACC is thrilled to be collaborating with our system partners as a new member of the DEI Implementation Work Group. We also wanted to let you know that union leaders from all three faculty unions, CFT, CCA, and CCC, are doing important DEI work within their colleges and communities. And as President Davison mentioned, with the support of the Chancellor's Office, FACC will be working with our union leaders on short-term and long-term goals to advance DEI and anti-racism commitments within our colleges and communities. Thank you.
Thank you. Other public comment?
Yes, Jesse Ryan, you have control of your mic.
Good afternoon, Chancellor Oakley, Chair Epstein, and members of the Board of Governors. I will be brief, given the directive from the chair. I do want to thank you for the continued commitment that you've had to this diversity, equity, and inclusion work. I don't think it is an overstatement to say that there is not student success without diversity, equity, and inclusion. And this journey that you've been on has been uncomfortable at times, but has really reflected a commitment to a radically student-centered approach that is absolutely necessary at this moment in time. I want to thank our students today and our faculty leaders for the tremendous work that they have put into the implementation of these recommendations. And I want to call out something that Stephen said. You know, Stephen really did, in both quoting left out, which has been foundational to much of this work, call upon us to recognize that the work will only be successful if students are partners at the table of these reforms. But he also said that we have a moral imperative to see the urgency of this moment in time, to take action and move away from dialogue that can continue to result in incremental change that leaves students behind in the process. I want to both recognize the amount of work that has gone into the last year and a half of the DEI efforts, but I also want to really advocate that we continue to recognize that we cannot tinker at the margins, that we have to not wait for the willingness to at scale tackle these types of reforms, but demand an urgency that recognizes that for every day that we continue to figure out how we will gain the resources to see this vision into fruition, there are students like the student we heard from in Peralta that are victims of unfortunate racism and bias that exist in our classrooms every day. So thank you for your commitment to a culture of transformation, but also I would say that that culture of transformation should have began more than a decade ago. And for every month that we see incremental progress, there are thousands of students who are looking to you as leaders to demand more and to demand it quickly.
Thank you. Other public comment?
Yes, Trilia, you now have control of your mic and can address the board.
Thank you. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Hopefully that's the case. Okay, wonderful. So, hello, Chancellor Oakley, Chair Epstein, and the Board of Governors, and hello, members of the public. My name is Trillia Hargrove, and I am a CCSF student and an equity advocate with Students Making a Change. First of all, to me, it seems like having to remind those in power that equity still very much matters comes around at least every few months. Even in these times of distress and uncertainty, equity still very much plays a part, especially when looking at the demographics of people disproportionately affected, BIPOC communities, and an increasing number of people that are homeless. Our institutions need to be aware of these issues and strive to make this awareness a pillar of said institution. That is why I ask the board to please support action item 4.7 on the agenda to promote equity and anti-racism and to set a precedent of diversity and open conversation in our most important community institutions. Community colleges should be able to easily understand the climate that students and faculty are coming from, one of radical liberation. And an additional note, I strongly agree with the points that were made by multiple members about making students directly involved with the equity hirings and anti-racist implementations. Thank you.
Thank you. Other members of the public?
Not using Zoom, but do we have any emails?
Yes, I've received 6 public comment for this item via email. I'll begin to read it now.
I'm sorry, so you received how many?
6.
6, okay. And they all have to be under 3 minutes.
Correct. I'll time them. This one is from Brian Rivas, the Senior Director of Policy and Government Relations with the Education Trust West. Dear Board of Governors, as an organization working to expose and eradicate the injustices and inequities in California's school and colleges, the Education Trust West, ETW, appreciates the Board of Governors' urgency and commitment to transform the culture and climate at your campuses. During a time when the system's 2.1 million students are facing multiple challenges, COVID-19, an economic recession, a cultural reckoning on racial injustice, your leadership in addressing systemic and institutional biases for the betterment of students is amicable. We are pleased to support this establishment of a Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Awareness Month as detailed within Agenda Item 4.7. Thank you for the progress made and the dedication to the work still ahead of the DEI implementation work group. Your progression in advancing regulatory changes, embedding diversity, equity, and inclusion into statewide awards, increasing professionalism development opportunities related to diversity, equity, and inclusion, and anti-racism, creating a glossary of common language to utilize in unpacking and dismantling racist structures, and releasing a legal opinion in best practices in hiring our groundbreaking as a post-secondary segment. ETW has long advocated for a more representative teacher and faculty workforce throughout California's education system. Through our Seen, Heard, Reflected campaign, along with other similar resources, we highlight the benefits students receive from having teachers and professors who look like them. Students' academic performance improves, more positive role modeling occurs, faculty and students tend to be more culturally aware, and students are less likely to hold implicit biases in adulthood. The data are clear. Furthermore, we applaud the California Community Colleges and BOG for evaluating the opportunity before voters in November to fight for racial and gender equality via Proposition 16. While much of the debate has focused on admission to UC schools and less about the harmful impact the ban on affirmative action has had on California community colleges, we believe that the passage of Prop 16 can expedite your system's progress in addressing barriers to success for students of color, creating dialogue on race and racism, and facilitating the hiring of faculty and administrators of color. In closing, the ETW commends the BOG and all the involved stakeholders on being more intentional about how you push for student-centered, equity-driven, and culturally responsive change. We stand ready to help this project in any way we can and ask the BOG to approve the resolution which established DEI Inclusion Awareness Month for CCC. All right. The next
Christina, are they all distinct and different, or is there repetition here?
They're from different groups, but
yeah, I guess I'm a little concerned. We have another item where there are students that have to do it today. We're already at 4:45. I guess if if they're all different and distinctive, I guess we could do it. That was a pretty long one, so let's try and get the gist and move ahead.
Mm-hmm. Okay. The next one is from Adrian Gray, trustee with West Valley Mission Community College District. In addition to urging support for the recommended action DEI Awareness Month, and together with DEI implementation actions undertaken by both the CEO and trustee boards of the League, as itemized in the DEI Implementation Work Group Progress Report, the League announces the following. The League updates its policies and procedures subscription service, which serves as a model for nearly all of our district's locally adopted policies and administrative procedures. We are in the process of updating these policies and procedures to align with both the League's and the system's emphasis on a racial equity and social justice. And as part of that effort, ensuring our district remain in compliance with applicable state and federal laws. We will keep you informed as to the progress of this service and how it is supporting our district's effort in advancing our shared priorities of combating racism and promoting social justice. The next one is from Nikki Hatfield, a student at City College of San Francisco and the president of the Black Student Union, and I strongly recommend the Chancellor Office adopt the 68 recommendations. Equity ensures every student can get the right education at the right time. Working with my peers, I see the need to create more inclusive spaces, more equitable spaces for us. Black students deserve more support and to see themselves reflected in faculty and campus culture. This policy has the potential to change the status quo and help our most vulnerable populations. Okay. The next one is from Denise Castro with Students Making a Change. Students Making a Change has been working to close the achievement gap in higher education by advocating for equity in California community colleges. We work directly with community colleges, with students of color, and are hearing their struggles, feeling a heavy weight of anxiety on their shoulders, stress from the uncertainty of how they will pay for their textbooks and food, lacking support and guidance from their college, and experiencing microaggressions in online classes. I'm asking that the BOG uphold your commitment to equity, anti-racism, anti-Blackness, racial justice, and liberation. The pandemic will widen the achievement gap if no action is taken to address systemic racism in the California community colleges. Community colleges serve the highest percentage of students of color, and faculty are not reflective of students' racial and ethnic diversity. We need to better serve our students of color. Thousands of community college students of color are ready for college leaders to listen to their concerns and to take action to transform racist policies, practices, cultures, and climate on their campus. Lastly, she says, now is the time to double down on equity by 1, implementing the 68 recommendations in the DEI Inclusion Integration Plan with urgency. 2, providing additional diversity, equity, and inclusion financial resources. 3, supporting the resolution to establish DEI Awareness Month in California's community colleges to recognize equity champions. And 4, centering students in the decision-making process. SMAC and the 2.1 million community college students will hold you accountable for your promise to reduce and erase equity gaps outlined in the Vision for Success, for paying attention to whether you take immediate and urgent actions to address systemic change. And then there's 2 more, one more from Students Making a Change, and then another one from the president of San Jose Community College District.
Go ahead.
So from the president, Rowena Tamanen, San Jose Community College. Good afternoon, Chancellor Oakley, President Epstein, Board of Governors. My name is Dr. Rowena Tamanen, President of SJCC and the district. In addition to serving as a member of the CEO CCC board, I'm also vice chair of the Asian Pacific Islander Trustees and Administrators, CCC Caucus, and vice president of the Asian Pacific Americans in Higher Education, APAHI. I am ready to commend the work thus far of the DEI Implementation Work Group under the leadership of Deputy Chancellor Daisy Gonzalez. As one of the CEO members of the DEI Implementation Work Group, I have appreciated the system-wide and multi-strategy approach taken by the work group. Our progress report shows that our statewide associations are developing more detailed plans to engage our system, including providing training and tools to carry out the DEI Task Force recommendation. Lastly, she writes, I have been an equity-centered educator in our system for over 25 years, and the deep level of commitment and spirit of collaboration present in members of the work group have given me a renewed sense of hope and confidence that the diversity of our students will finally be mirrored in their faculty, staff, and administrators. I am inspired that our system has come together to concretely address racism in education. We know that racial bias has been identified as a major barrier to DEI in regards to access and retention of faculty of color. And we also know that research tells us that students of color are more likely to engage in their students with teachers that look like them. So I commend your leadership and continued support of the DEI implementation work group. Lastly, from Marjorie with the City College of San Francisco and the interim program coordinator at Students Making a Change. Shortly, she writes, I'm writing to the Board of Governors to ask to please support item 4.7 on the agenda. We must keep pushing to address system racism across all community colleges in the state of California. Our underrepresented and underprivileged students' future depends on it. It's crucial that we continue to advocate and create policies that reflect our communities and to dismantle systemic racism. That's exactly what the 68 recommendations would do for all 116 community colleges. Supporting these measures will create a better future in our state and equitable education for students. Thank you in advance for supporting our most vulnerable students and for being a strong leader during these difficult times.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, members of the public. Thank you to the Academic Senate and the Student Senate leaders for their fantastic presentations on this vital issue. I believe we have one piece of business to take care of, which is to adopt the resolution on declaring DEI Awareness Month. So do we have a motion?
Move approval.
Vice President Haynes, second?
Second.
Aguinaldo, I think, beat you to the punch. Okay, please call the roll.
The one time that happens.
Hildegarde Aguinaldo.
Aye.
Amy Costa.
Aye.
Tom Epstein.
Aye.
Alicia Escobar Carrillo.
Aye.
Colin Fitzgerald.
Aye.
Jolena Grande.
Aye.
Pamela Haynes.
Aye.
Eleni Konolakis. Kim Paragon.
Aye. I'm sorry, I don't know if you called me. Aye.
Great, thank you both. Jennifer Perry.
Aye.
Bill Rawlings.
Aye.
Alma Salazar.
Aye.
Valerie Shaw.
Aye.
Blas Villalobos.
Aye.
Joseph Williams.
Aye.
Great, so we have a new DEI Awareness Month. And Colin, unless this is really important, we really need to move on to the next item since we're almost out of time.
Just the one sentence request through the chair, if it's okay.
Sure.
Might I request through the chair that the Chancellor's Office within the next month report back on how kind of students have been included in hiring committees, give a little bit more information, set up a potential agenda item so that we may take action on this issue in the future?
Absolutely. Chancellor got the message?
We're happy to come back. It would have to probably not be at the November meeting, but soon after that to give it time to actually go into effect.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Come back.
Okay, so we're going to start item 4.8. Sorry, we're going to go over our scheduled time, but I hope everybody can hang with us. We have some students and other outside presenters that we'd really like to hear from. So, Executive Vice Chancellor Alvarado, are you going to introduce this one?
I will. Thank you. Good afternoon. Thank you, President Epstein, Vice President Haynes, Chancellor Oakley. We are very excited to bring this item before the board. This item is the resolution declaring support for student basic needs. I will try to keep my comments brief. If you will recall, at our July meeting, we had a presentation and an information spotlight on the work that has been happening across our system relative to trying to address student basic need, housing insecurity, food insecurity, mental health gaps in services, and other resource needs, as well as the work, as well as the limitations with financial aid supports. The item that we are bringing to you as a result of that conversation really centers on recognizing that the need is significant. The need was significant pre-COVID. It is even more significant moving forward. The resources that we have continue to be limited and insufficient to substantially addressing the need. It also greatly impacts student progress and achievement and persistence in their educational outcomes, and is substantially inequitable for our student populations. And so what we bring to you today is an item for your consideration, a resolution acknowledging the inequitable and overly burdensome requirements for accessing critical basic needs from our California programs, both within our institution and beyond, and calls for our state leadership, state level calls for, our chancellor's office to lead state level interagency collaboration and coordination to streamline student access and receipt of statewide resources. I am incredibly grateful to introduce a panel who will share a few comments around the significance of this resolution. We have joining us today, we'll hear from both Board Member Aguinaldo and Board Member Fitzgerald. We will also hear from our amazing SSCCC President, Stephen Coder. We will also hear from New Hope Village CEO, Angela Pasco, who will share a little bit about her experience working with students and Barstow Community College. And then we will hear from Vice President Student Services at Bakersfield College and Student Supports Association President, Zav Dadapoy. With that, I would love to hand it over to Board Member Aguinaldo, who will kick things off, and then we will, from there, move on to our student President, Stephen Coder. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Executive Vice Chancellor Alvarado. I'll try to make this quick as well, because I think the majority of the time should go to my co-panelists. So I can't help but think of something Maya Angelou once said: do the best you can until you know better. Then when you know better, do better. We already knew that an unacceptable number of our students did not have security in their basic needs. We know now that systemic barriers and systemic racism takes a leading role in why students of color, students who identify as non-binary or transgender, who are part-time, and former foster youth or returning citizens are at greater risk for basic needs insecurity, especially in these challenging times. So now we need to do better, and that's exactly what this resolution calls for. It asks us to break down silos and politicization and exercise the innovation, resilience, and common sense that our students demonstrate best to rethink things like financial aid and healthcare. This resolution brings critical stakeholders to the table with one goal in mind: to dismantle the current structure that unduly burdens students already in need, such that we could put a simpler and more responsive resource in its place to meet students where they are and to help them succeed. And it asks us to do so now that we know. So before I pass the microphone, I'd just like to express my deep appreciation to Board Member Fitzgerald for his invaluable personal investment to driving this resolution, to the Chancellor's team for helping to bring the resolution to fruition, and to Student Senate President Coder, CEO Pasco, and VP Dadaboy for their courage in sharing their voice on this issue. So with that, I'll pass it off to the Student Senate President.
So much, Board Member Aguinaldo. Again, hello everybody. My name is Stephen Coder. I'm the President for the Student Senate for California Community Colleges, also a student at Reedley College in the Central Valley. I am here just to speak from experience, right? I'm a student, and this resolution will directly affect students. So I'm here to give you my student expertise. And to me, this resolution itself is in direct alliance with everything that the Student Senate stands for and advocates for on behalf of our over 2.1 million students. So I want to talk to you briefly first about the SSCCC priorities. Our main priority, part of our legislative priority, is basic needs funding.
And this is established because of the numerous resolutions that come to us from our students every spring in the General Assembly. Every spring we hold a General Assembly for students to come forward and bring resolutions that we adopt as the 2.1 million students in the California Community College system. We have had numerous resolutions on mental health services, getting mental health services to our students because it is a huge need that they have. We have one to establish basic needs centers on campus. We have one for overnight parking for students to be able to sleep in their cars on campus. And see, the thing is with this is students saw this as, yes, a Band-Aid solution, but because they were so desperate to get that sort of funding, they need funding for basic needs, but they're not getting it. So they're saying, hey, at least can we park in our cars on campus? If we can't get the funding to afford housing for these students, well, can we at least park in our cars on campus? So we have numerous different resolutions on funding for our underserved populations, for our formerly incarcerated students, for our veteran students, for our undocumented students, getting them the resources they need to be able to succeed at the community college level. The SSCCC conducted a survey, and it's actually talked about in this resolution. But in this survey, the underlying concern was resources. Students were experiencing mental health decline. But at the very bottom line, it was because of the resources that they were not receiving. Students were losing out on technology. They didn't have the technology to get through their semester, so they were dropping out, or they were just failing their classes. They did not have the food. Food pantries were closing down. There weren't enough resources to be able to fund the food pantry. Housing was an issue. Students now are losing their income. Did we know that as students that are student workers that work for federal work studies or for the federal work study program do not receive unemployment when they lose their job? So these students are now completely out of resources, and now their mental health is suffering. They're lacking the resources to be able to get through their semesters. Basic needs to me is very personal. I am a non-traditional student. I am actually 30 years old right now. And when I first started in the community college system, I dropped out of community college 3 different times on 3 different occasions because I did not have the resources I needed to succeed. And I do not want to toot my own horn. I'm a very smart, intelligent person that could easily get through college, but I did not have the resources there. I did not live at home with my parents. I literally couch surfed for 2 semesters to be able to go to class and try and make it. I did not have technology to be able to do that. I did not have transportation. I had a longboard that I rode over 10 miles to get myself to class and back. I did not have the money to afford my annual bus pass. That was not linked to any sort of student ID card. There were not the resources there to help me succeed. I had to drop out 3 different times, each time to try and join the workforce to where I was getting paid minimum wage because I did not have the degree of where I could be able to get the right funding for me to be able to do my classes. I survived off of ramen, off of macaroni and cheese from the food pantry, off of stale bread, but those are the resources that some students just need to be able to survive. So schooling was a priority. I wanted to get through it. And I know that there are a lot of students that aren't in my situation as I am now. Luckily for me, I actually have a job. I'm a PE technician. I'm actually part of local 253 CSEA. So Mr. Rawlings, what's up? I saw you at our CSEA meeting just this past couple months, but other students don't have those opportunities. Other students don't have those resources. I was able to buy myself a second cell phone this semester because I did not get the technology that I needed. I couldn't access Wi-Fi in my remote location that I was in Dinuba, California, which is a very rural part of Dinuba. So there are so many things that students need to be able to succeed, and this basic needs resolution will begin to scratch the surface on helping these students, right? And it's being able to have food stamps, the food stamps process being intertwined with their application to a community college, right? And I want to just highlight the RP group recently did a transfer through the gate survey where they're saying that, you know, certain racial groups, you know, African-American students are the least likely to get to the transfer process, but once they get to that transfer gate, then they're the most likely to succeed. But it's all those barriers that they hit along the way. But Latino students are the most likely to get to the transfer gate, but then they don't succeed. And it's because Latino students, and especially here in the Central Valley, it's something that I had to do. We dropped out so that way we can go work in the fields. I climbed a ladder for a whole summer to pick nectarines and peaches, putting them in a bag, loading them up, just so I can get, you know, through my schooling. So this is a huge resolution. I urge you to support this resolution, and we, the students, stand by this resolution. So thank you.
Thank you so much, President Kadur. I want to hand it over now to Angela Pasco. Thank you so much for joining us, Angela. I'll hand it over. Angela, you are on mute.
Yes.
Great.
Yes, there I am. Okay. Wow, what a great group. My goodness, I can only hope I can be as well as you do speaking. So good afternoon, I'm Angela Pasco, Executive Director for New Hope Village. Thank you for this opportunity to support the board's resolution declaring support for the students' basic needs. Food, clothing, shelter, mental health, basic needs. If these basic needs are not taken care of, then nothing else works. Barstow sits in the middle of the Mojave Desert, halfway from LA and halfway from Vegas. Maybe you stopped by, I don't know. Anyway, 58% of our population are on some type of government assistance. Barstow struggles for services, being here in the high desert. New Hope Village has been serving our homeless families and individuals in gaining self-sufficiency for over 20 years. We have 13 apartments and 2 homes that are fully furnished, and currently we are at a 96% success rate of people leaving our program with income and a permanent place to live. Case management and life skills are the core and essential programs of New Hope Village. We are honored to be in collaboration with Barstow Community College to help serve our homeless students with their basic needs. This grant is amazing. I can't tell you enough how great this grant is. I mean, I just get so emotional about it because, anyway, it's just amazing. We know that without a stable home, nothing else works. Education is the key to alleviating homelessness. Barstow College's motto is start here, go anywhere. Fits with our motto as a hand up, not a handout. We have the same vision to help put an end to homelessness. We are sharing our resources as well. And I love the name Homeless and Housing Insecurity Program, HIP. That's so cool, HIP, it's a HIP program. Barstow College, we do supply fully furnished apartments. We provide food, hygiene items, transportation in collaboration with Barstow College. This partnership has allowed us to expand our services as well. Students receive the resources to become more stable while growing educationally. Let me see, I want to share a little bit about myself. I was a formerly homeless mom 20 years ago, and I came through the program at New Hope Village. I don't know where I would be without a program to help lay the foundation for me to begin my life over again. Okay, Barstow College and New Hope Village had 1 student move on successfully to UC Riverside. And then we just celebrated on September 11th, a welcome home ceremony for 2 of our students who are permanently housed right here in Barstow. What an amazing journey for Barstow College and New Hope Village. Thank you for including and supporting our community and helping to end the homelessness. Thank you.
Thank you, Angela. With that, we will head over to Dr. Dadaboy.
Good afternoon, President Epstein, Chancellor Oakley, and members of the board. I'm Zab Dadaboy, Vice President of Student Affairs at Bakersfield College and the President of the Chief Student Services Officers Association. I'm here today to represent a leadership network of the 116 Vice Presidents of Student Services in our system and their staff. As a collective, we are the people who provide the out-of-class services and the network of connected systems that supports every student's collegiate outcome. And through that, we further the California Community College's vision for success. Every single day, we clarify complex regulatory matters in admissions, enrollment services, and financial aid. We guide students on their academic journey, continuously advising and nudging them along the way. And we are there every day as a safety net to support them when all else goes awry. Our students, as you are keenly aware, need that support. Our work matters. Compared to the other higher ed systems in the state, our students are far more likely to be unable to meet basic needs to be successful students. As CSSOs, this is our daily challenge, and we passionately care about helping students despite the obstacles they face. Our staff are the first to hear about their hurdles and help the students try to clear them even before they sign up for class. We are there to help navigating regulatory barriers, overcoming financial hurdles, acquiring the resources needed to attend college, and connecting them to services on campus as well as off campus. At the campus level, this calls for case management, and we do that on a regular basis. It means coordinating with a variety of programs to try to provide students with wraparound services and develop a support system. As best as possible, we involve strategic community-based partners to get the student the assistance that they need. At its core, this resolution emphasizes a scaled up and coordinated system to address these complex regulatory matters that need to be streamlined. Some of these regulations were developed years ago and developed in silos that may not make sense nowadays, especially within a guided pathways framework. Some are overly restrictive. They're additive in value in terms of regulations, and rather than it being easy to navigate, result in complexity and often layers and layers of bewildering obstacles. Many do not facilitate the needs of our most vulnerable students and create unintended barriers that hinder basic diversity and equity outcomes. And this, at its core, is why I support this resolution. We embrace the concept that it takes a village to help a student succeed, but we must scale that level of coordinated work through structured approaches that address regulatory barriers, that coordinate services, and address inequities in resource allocation at the state level. I mentioned that on our college campus level, we already attempt this through case management. Many of our colleges have developed basic needs initiatives and centers. Others have hired social work professionals to help coordinate the work needed. And there are numerous other commendable initiatives that you know about, such as food pantries and programs to address transportation barriers or homelessness at the local level. All of those address basic needs and insecurities of our students, but they cannot be adequately scaled up given the current resources available to the colleges. And therefore, there is a gap that no level of campus effort can reasonably overcome. The current budget reality means there are insufficient new funds available for this type of work. At the same time, the true cost of attending colleges increases. You know, financial aid remains disproportionately less for community college students in California. And you know about the student loan and debt crisis, which make it more difficult for our low-income college students to reach their aspirations. Higher education is proving not to be the panacea to economic inequality for so many of our students. And that is why we support this resolution. We applaud the Chancellor and his senior staff for trying to work collaboratively with agencies that typically act in silos to focus on meeting our students' needs. We support these efforts. We hope we can synchronize and systematize the support structures towards this end goal. And most of all, this resolution provides us hope that we can redesign, streamline, and simplify the complex array of rules, practices, and regulations so that we can get students the resources that they need to succeed. They matter.
Thank you so much. With that, I will hand it over to Board Member Fitzgerald, who will wrap up our comments.
Thank you so much. I want to start off by thanking Vice Chancellor Alvarado and the incredible team at the Chancellor's Office for their hard work, working with myself and the incredible board member Aguinaldo on this incredible resolution. And a special thanks, of course, to my fellow co-presenters, President Stephen Couture, Angela Pasco, and Dr. Zab Dadboy. Just under 2 years ago, I remember sitting down with my Student Body Association president at the San Joaquin Delta College cafeteria for lunch. And like any other day, it was a lot of small talk. How are you? How are your classes, work, life in general? As always, Jared spoke with a solemn smile, but this time I could tell something was bothering him. It took a little prying, but he would admit he had a tough choice forthcoming. If he couldn't figure out his financial aid, he would have to drop out of college. He couldn't figure it out on his own. He couldn't afford it on his own. But he was most sad, not about losing this progress, this tangible progress that Stephen talked about in his presentation of having to go back and start over. He wasn't most sad about that. He was most sad about having to abandon his position in student government, of leaving his team behind. All because of some complications with previous employment and a lack of resources, and thus a lack of serious attention from the right staff. The California Community Colleges almost lost one of our greatest pupils, our greatest success stories. The Vision for Success, our guiding document, an honest look at our system, its strengths and its weaknesses, list 6 goals. The ultimate purpose of these goals is equity. The fulfillment of these promises means that when Chancellor Oakley, when he's known to say, says we accept the top 100% of prospective students, his words ring true. In order to fulfill these promises, the document lists out 7 commitments. The first 2, we must focus relentlessly on students' end goals and always design with the student in mind. Today, with the passage of this resolution, we have a chance to make good on these commitments once again, to come one step closer to fulfilling our promises. I want to be clear. This resolution is more than basic needs advocacy. It's about access. It's about opportunity. It's about doing our part as a system to give every single student a chance at greatness. It's about doing our part as citizens of this great state to help rewrite the wrongs of prior injustice. It's about doing our part as citizens of these United States to come one step closer to fulfilling the promise of the American dream. That when someone like Jared, without much money to his name, without privilege or connections, works hard enough for long enough, they can and they will and they must succeed. I've seen this promise fail too many times in my hometown of Stockton. And we can't afford to let such potential slip through the cracks any longer. And despite the hardship they faced in our system, students like Jared continue to push for prospective students to attend our colleges. Students like Jared are our greatest supporters. A couple months after my appointment to the Board of Governors, I told Christina I lost my Board of Governors pin. With her gleaming smile, she told me no worries, got me a little pouch with another. Truth is, I took that pin home because I was meeting with someone for dinner later that day who I thought needed it, both as an apology for our system's prior wrongs, but more importantly, as a thank you for making our system better. It was after our last meeting when I spoke to him. Jared told me he still has that pin and he still wears it with great pride. Now is a chance to do better for our future students. Now is a chance to do better for the future of this state, and now is a chance to do better for the future of this country. Join me in this sacred opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Member Fitzgerald. That was a beautiful, powerful statement. And Stephen, you as well. Thank you. Professor Zeb, thank you as well. So, and of course, Member Aguinaldo. This is all really important issue, very well presented, and I think it's pretty obvious that all of us care a lot about this. We recognize this as kind of the crucial issue that affects just about everybody in our system. So with that, it's open to board comments.
Hi, Tom, this is Amy. I agree. The presentations, especially the student presentations, were really powerful, so thank you. I would like to offer a technical amendment to the resolution now, and it's in the final resolve section, which we ask that the Chancellor's Office partner with the governor and other state agencies. And I would simply point out that many of the programs that help the basic needs that have been addressed here are actually federal programs that are administered by counties. And only the state manages and oversees them. So I'd like to, as a friendly amendment, offer that it read, resolve that the Chancellor's Office partner with the governor, comma, other state agencies, comma, and federal and local agencies, just to make it a little bit more inclusive, because frankly, the state in many of these cases has little to do with the application process. And I know many community colleges partner with their counties and to make some of this easier for students. And I think it's probably more effective at that level.
Thank you. Then I assume that you would also want to eliminate the word state, where it says to redesign existing state application and approval structures, and just to redesign.
Broader, because yeah, often there's federal guidelines.
Yeah. Right. Okay. This hasn't been. You can put that on the floor as a motion. We'll continue to talk, and then we'll vote on it after we've heard everybody's comments. Other board member comments?
President Epstein?
Yes, Member Tarasova.
I really want to echo everything that our students said. Basic needs is the issue that stops millions of students from attending community college or dropping out. There is a dire need to expand access and resources for the students who are struggling to stay here in college in the system. One of the goals of the Visions of Success states that we need to pair higher expectations with high support, whether it is personal or academic challenges that the student is facing, now more than ever. Currently, I'm helping out with the food drive at my local community college, and I wanted to share a few of the quotes that I've heard from the students. So there it goes. I currently don't have enough funds to buy food. I lost hours from my job due to COVID-19, so it's been difficult for me and my family. I live with my siblings and mother. I'm the oldest, so I'm the only one who's been helping my mom to provide for us. Another student had stated, I have been financially on my own since I moved away from home. I support myself by working as a server at a restaurant, but due to COVID-19, I have no longer to work. Please let me know if there's any resources available for me during this devastating time. So addressing the issues of housing and food insecurities along with mental health and unemployment with a more systematic and comprehensive approach is the way that we can help our students during these difficult times and support them throughout their successful academic journeys, which otherwise would be infeasible. Thank you.
Thank you. Other board member comments? Yes, Member Villalobos.
Thank you, Tom. I just want to thank you all for your presentations. This is a topic that it's extremely important to me. I used to work for a nonprofit, and I actually managed over the years employment, housing, and mental health programs for veterans. In fact, the very first program for homeless Iraq and Afghanistan veterans in Long Beach, Chancellor Oakley, you were there actually for the grand opening, and this was back in 2009, 2010, and you were the keynote speaker. And I'll never forget that day because it was then that I realized that most of my clients at the time were Long Beach City College students. And without that program, they wouldn't have been able to move on. And in fact, I just got in touch with one of them last week who was accepted into USC's MSW program. And his goal is to continue working with veterans, once you graduate. So he's definitely giving back. He took the opportunity to, do well, transfer out to Cal State Long Beach, and then now to USC, which was the very same thing I did, before I ended up at USC. So I got to witness firsthand how impactful these programs can be. So I'm all for it, 100% behind it. I want to thank you all for presenting. And anything, anything I can do to help, please let me know.
Thank you. Other board member comments?
Tom, if I can just add one quick thing, and certainly we appreciate the changes to the resolution and understand the need to go beyond the governor's office and the agencies, just as long as the board understands that we only have so many resources to give to the federal level coordination, but we will certainly do everything that we can to coordinate at all levels.
If I can also just jump in on that one, Chancellor, because I think the other thing that we have wrestled with as we developed this resolution was really trying to define a scope that would create the starting point, recognizing that our state agencies